These days, many people are wondering, could this be the right time to invest? As eToro traders have shown, periods
walking the rave, like checklist. Got one more for the set list. Jump on stage, see everybody stacking away, so you know who the best is. Walking the rave like checklist. Got one more for the set list.
Hi Jupiter, how are you?
I'm all right. What's up with you?
I survived. I'm going to read this email out to you. Yeah? It's from a survivor. She confided in me, and it's the first time she told the story. Never told her parents. She's an adult. Yeah, now never told her parents. And this is what she sent me, and she confided in. She said, she wanted to. She wanted to share this with me and spread awareness. So this is what she said to me. Confused in my mind, memories I can't find. Because when you did that to me that day, it was my childhood you took away. I wanted it all back, but you took it from me. Self-harming at 8. It isn't how it should be. You affected my life in so many ways. I prayed every night to stop these dark days. 20 years later, I still feel the pain. I was 8 years old. I couldn't be to blame. So when you're dying in your resting place, I hope you remember my little face.
Mm.
That's what I got from a survivor. 3 o'clock this morning. Then I got a reply back. I said to her, "You okay?" She said, "Yes, I'm fine. I just thought if I could see it from a children's point of view and how it could affect us, I was gonna write a little something to about how it would affect me after that self-harming suicide act. If I can't change one man for help one person going through it, then I am happy to do it as long as it is anonymous, as my family don't know, and I don't ever want them knowing. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for sticking up for the kids. Not many people would do it, but you are helping. I know you was on YouTube when I was a child, and I would have confided in you."
Quite nice, easy, isn't it?
Sorry.
That's nice, easy, isn't it? That's telling you
Heart,
that.
yeah, it broke my heart actually because all this talk about, and the reason I'm reading that, I'm going to read that every, I'm going to put that on all platforms, and that is the eyes of an 80-year-old who tried to commit suicide.
It's sad.
Yeah, I know it's depressing and that, but I can't stop spreading an awareness. I've got to spread awareness, Jupiter. Then I had somebody in the trial, "Do you only show Pakistani grooming?" Thing. Oh, no, fuck off.
Look, easy.
Yeah.
You've got to get your head into a space where you don't take any notice of
Yeah.
any comments.
Mm.
Seriously,
Yeah.
because you're doing good work over here.
Mm.
I know that your channel keeps going up and down because you keep having people attacking you, but
Mm.
you're still going. You're still going strong.
You would have enjoyed it last night. We had a karaoke last night over here.
Yeah, I probably would have done, you know.
Yeah, I wish I should have emailed you. There was Dale, Angela, a new person from Liverpool, Tina, Emily, Kaz, and it all went well. And then somebody struck it.
Someone stopped the show.
Yeah,
For what?
because I had music playing in the background. It's a karaoke music, and it got struck.
Oh.
And I got porn bombed
I'm
yesterday.
talking about. Yeah, I'll tell you what. These people, they're sick. They're sickos.
Yeah,
Honestly, they're sickos. What's going on at the moment? The way Raj is being handed down is
mm.
just wrong as well.
I'm going to speak to Raj later, actually, if I can get
Yeah.
hold of him.
But we just have to stand firm and stand strong. You know, there's a good little group of us, and you've got
Yes.
people who can be easy. You know that.
Yeah, and what I was going to say is I done a stream when Rodney came on, and I gave him a bit of a talking to, and I said, you got it all wrong. And I said, I just explained how much shit you two get, and Raj. I said, what you've got is nothing compared to these ladies I've got over the years. And they weren't distancing you because they dislike you, because they don't want to take the flack from other people anymore. And it's quite right. That's why I've stayed off the platforms of Wendy's at the moment, because I don't want them having that. You know what I mean? And I'm keeping it over here, really, because I know you all got your own problems with all this shit. Do you know what I mean? So we all just got to stay strong with it, to be honest with you two.
You're always welcome. We're not worried about your trolls. The problem, look, I'll be honest with you, I'm going to lay it on the line. The problem that I've got with Rodney is that they thought I was sending him.
Yeah.
And when I tried to get through to him, no, look, don't go on there because this is what they think. Just stay away for a while, because also they're bullying you into saying stuff.
Yeah.
He said, I can do what I like. I don't have to listen to you, a bit like what you did. And I was like,
I told him that. Yeah, I told him exactly that but I did listen to you afterwards.
Yeah, I know you did.
Yeah, in the end.
So I said to him, all right, yeah, you're right. You can do what you want to do. You're an adult. But then I'm going to have to distance myself to make it clear to the viewers that I am not endorsing what you're doing.
Yeah, because I take every opportunity to have a go at you, don't they?
Yes, insist it. And he then turned up the next day and said I disowned him like I disowned a kid.
No, you didn't. You didn't. I could tell how you were worn down. I could tell the other day, when I cut out. I knew you were tired.
Since then, I've seen other stuff anyway. I mean, I've got you look. I've got time for people that got mental health problems. I tried with Spy. They turned it around, said I was grooming her, so I had to distance myself. With you, Easy, I tried to help you when I see what you were going through.
Yeah. I really appreciate that.
I'd do the same, but Rodney has been over talking to Brian Hurl, and apparently he's on the same medication as Brian Hurl, which means they've got the same problems, which means even more of a reason I've got a distance.
Well, I laid that on the line with Brian Hurl. I said, what are you trying to help him for? He needs an iron fist, not a fucking help. I said, that bloke's scum. Don't come over and telling me you want to help him.
Yeah,
Hi, Kate Brett.
Well, this is the problem. I think Rodney's sense of working out who's right and who's wrong is very weak. I mean, I've seen him sitting on panels agreeing that Raj shouldn't have called the police and stuff like that, and I don't agree with that.
No, I don't either.
He's being stalked. He's getting death threat letters through the mail, and people are telling him don't go to the police. What the fuck?
Yeah, and I got told on that show over there, people were cloning my account saying I was a paedophile.
See, it's not funny.
No.
Funny. And then you've got the other day, the Wasp posting someone talking about sexual abuse in detail and stuff. I don't think that was right either.
I think that was a sting, though, Jupiter, wasn't it? They were
I don't
stinging
know.
him to get him done.
I don't know.
think-
To do it live on air, I don't know.
Yeah, I didn't listen to. I just couldn't listen to it. I just couldn't listen to it.
Well,
You know.
I didn't go and have a look. Wendy went and had. Wendy went. Oh, there's 150 on WAS. There must be something really good going on.
Mm.
She went and watched it for 2 minutes, and she come back. She went, "No, it's too much. I ain't even going to put that on my show."
Mm.
I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "Oh, there's some bloke over there talking about his partner abusing his kids." I mean, joking. She went, "No."
Mm.
I don't know, but maybe it was a sting. I'm not going to judge, and I'm not slagging
Yeah,
anyone.
I think the way they do it these days is to get enough evidence to get hold of them. Yeah, and I think it's the only way because they've been sly. I think I did listen to how Watts was speaking to me. He was very clever how he was speaking to him. Yeah, the guy sounded a bit slow.
I'm going to tell you the truth, though. I didn't watch it. I'm just going by what.
Yeah, I only listened to a little bit.
I know a lot of other people came back and went over and came back and said, "Oh no, it's really, really bad. Couldn't stomach it." And I've got to be honest, that's why I don't get involved in all that shit because too deeply, because it would make me ill. That's why. That's why I think what you do is good, Easy.
Oh, well, I'm lucky, Jupiter. If you just check out anonymously on my group, I've got about 50 mods and people doing it. I have had people come up and message me and say, "I can't do this anymore. I can't take the stories."
I don't mind bringing attention to it, but I can't
Yeah.
tolerate the details because it makes me. I end up actually throwing up, having headaches, and feeling really ill about it all.
Yeah, it's sickening, isn't it? I stay awake most of the night thinking about kids, you know, being hurt.
I was once in a group on Facebook. It was called it was something called the Great Awakening or something like that.
Oh, I've heard about that. Yeah.
And in the group, they used to share things that were going on, corruption, all different things. But then they started having somebody that came on there that kept dropping stuff to do with child abuse, like this one's been caught, that one's been caught, this one's done this, and that. I had to leave. I had to leave because they come on and started talking about the dark web, and now they were catching this person in the dark web.
I don't go into all of that. I just spread awareness.
That was it. It terrified me for days.
Yeah, I won't go into the deep web thing because I don't know much about it. All I do, I get information and I just put it on my site, and that's it. Not the details. That person's been caught, or it's just a show awareness so people could just show their kids to look at who you see on the internet, basically. The details things, I leave that to the actual professionals.
It made me ill. Made me ill. I started looking at everybody. Are you one of them? Are you one of them? Because it was just so much of it. It got so overwhelming. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I do. This is why I didn't do it much on YouTube. I just do it on my Facebook page. But it's not the details. These are just stories who the people have been caught. Yeah. And it's just show awareness on the internet, you know. And with the details, I spare to do the details. You know, it's like a slick report to say this person's caught is from somewhere who's trying to meet the child or done something, and that's it. But none of the details, I won't put that through there. And secondly, I can't do that anyway because I just take the site down. So, you know, you can't do that because it gives other people ideas. So you sort of do it like short and sweet report, you know. Yeah. So you got like people.
Great for it. But yeah. No, I caught the end of your rant earlier. I was just about to come on, and you started ranting, and then turned it off.
All right, yeah. I just got a little bit of emotional. I was just reading out the email, and I just had that another in the chat. He only put up Pakistani nonsense. Well, he wasn't a Pakistani; he was Indian actually. And I've put up all kinds, and it just you know, I'm reading out this email and he comes out with that, and I think, what's going through their fucking heads? You know, you know.
It's a lie, because I've known you talk about white paedophiles as well.
Yeah. Oh God, look, the more people you get stung is the white ones. Do you know what I mean? And a lot of females, unfortunately.
Yeah, well, that was something that's come to light in the last few sort of like 10 years, just how prolific it is amongst females now as well.
Yeah.
That's where I start thinking maybe these religious people have got it right with the we're in the end days when you see how abhorrent it is.
Yeah, I think. Do you know what? what it is we got to change the government's way of thinking. Me personally, you know. But like I said,
The trouble is we've got too many fucking wussies, and don't get me wrong, I'm quite soft touch deep down inside. I think you know that probably easy.
of course I do. Yeah, yeah.
But we've got too many wussies that want to treat these people with kid gloves. They want to go. They want to say, oh, you know, oh, but it's not their fault. It's a sexual preference, and they're born with it. And we should think about ways of helping them. Fuck off.
No,
They damage the kid's life.
did you see? There's a state in America where they castrate them with a tablet.
Yeah,
So
but I've heard that the castration don't always work.
No, because they can use their hands still. You know, I just think it should be a death sentence, and that's it. That's what I see.
I don't believe this is where it becomes difficult for me, because I believe that all life is sacred, right? And I believe that bad karma would come to me if I was to sort of like put a death sentence on someone. But in this case, when we've got DNA and if it's absolutely proven, then yeah, I agree with you.
That's what this is what I don't reckon. We've got all the DNA now. You can use lie detectors, you can use everything now. And I can't see what the problem is. And look how much money it's costing us to keep them in prison. Do you know what I mean? It's just ridiculous. So somebody could go rob a bank and get about 10 years for it, but a paedophile can interfere with a child and get only 2 years for it. How can that be so?
Well, you see, this is where it goes wrong. If they're not gonna kill him, I think they should incarcerate him for life, and life should mean life.
Yeah. But the worst thing about it,
having the misfortune of having to sit in a police cell for only sort of like 5 hours, 3 hours, whatever it was, the other week, couple of weeks ago.
Horrible, isn't it?
It is horrible, and I think they should be left there.
Yeah.
But I don't even think they should have fucking TV, and if they go mad in there, they go mad.
There was another documentary you saw where they created a little island on an area in America where they keep them all there so they're away from everyone. They keep them in this little thing, they're all together and they're not having any contact from the outside world from anyone. They just got this little area.
Yeah, but our country ain't big enough to do that, I don't think.
No.
We'd have to have armed guards. We'd have to make sure the floor was fucking concrete. We'd have to make sure that they're fucking...
Yeah. I just...
we could do that. We could build a place. Well, we could stick them on one of the islands, couldn't we?
Well, you've got all these derelict places, haven't we? I mean, you've got the oil rigs. They could build something near the oil rigs or something, you know? I don't know. I mean, when you got France, who didn't have age consent till up to now, they didn't have an age consent, and now they've put it up to 14 now.
Yeah.
I will send that to Katie. I will actually. She was on Facebook, but she's been taken down.
You're joking?
Yeah, somebody said. She used to do her live streams on there. Facebook, look, I'll tell you what, right? Facebook has been trying to take my group down, right? Now, somebody found us a group on Facebook. It was called Little Boys and Little Girls. They've had
Yeah.
they've had 2,000 complaints to take it down, and they still haven't taken it down. That
And yet they're taking down Children Matters.
yeah, I hear. I don't know if it's her personal account or the organisation. Yeah.
Wow. You've still got a YouTube though, I would imagine.
Oh, she's still got a YouTube. Yeah. I'm going to be meaning to go over there, but it's just having the guts to go on a bigger platform, Jupiter. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, she's lovely. You should ask her if she can come on and speak on here. She will do it.
Yeah.
Great
Red-
Brick is in touch with her for you if you wanted to.
Yeah, and Redfield Pill does a lot of good work because he works for. He does a lot of filming for. Well, he was doing a lot of for PAC UK, Parents Against Grooming. That's the ones. See, I don't want. I want to do so I can help them, so they can have the support from us, so they've got more backings because they do this. They live and breathe this every day. Do you know what I mean? They actually go out on the streets and do this.
If he can get in, he can get in touch with Kate.
Yeah, I'm with him on VK now, so yeah, I'm going to start getting things moving on foot now, and actually get moving them over.
But if not, I'll tell you who else has got her contact, Jason.
Yes, I don't see Jason much anymore.
I think I might have it, but I'm not sure if I've still got the number. But I did have it. I'll have a look. But I did have her contact. But yeah, you can get in touch with her. She'll come on, even if you just do an hour.
Yeah.
Her stream.
Oh, Katie's got a band on YouTube as well. It was a video on cue. Okay.
So she'd be more than likely happy to come on and discuss on your thing then. If she hasn't got an open platform, she'd be more than likely to talk to you.
Yeah, and I'm in regular contact with Laura Lewis as well because she's been on there with her before.
Let me just check because I might have to.
See, a lot of people really don't. The ones I talk to on Facebook, they really don't want to go on YouTube because they're frightened of the trolls. I wish this lockdown around Jupiter. Oh, Jupiter, I've got the email address. It's okay. Okay. Thanks, Great Brit. Brilliant, mate. Sorry I couldn't get over to Redfield Pills, mate. It got a bit hectic a little bit yesterday. Yeah. She knows me by my real name, Great Brit. I did have her. I did speak to her on Messenger, but obviously I know she's busy. Maybe I should pop over Wake Up when she's on. I've got it, Jupiter, if you can hear.
Hello?
I've got it, Jupiter.
What, you got the phone number, yeah?
I know, I've got the email, and I've just checked on my Facebook list. She's still on my Facebook list, so I will speak to her. Yeah, she's great. She is. I might pop over to her.
I
I
have
might
got
pop over to wake up when she's on, actually, because Jason said just pop on when she's on. So,
okay, Great Brit said he'll do it for you.
oh, brilliant! And he said if you could, because you know her more than me, don't you, Jupiter?
I had her on my show once, and she did really, really well.
Mm.
And yeah, I've watched a couple of her shows, and they're pretty good.
Oh, thank you, Great Brit. Great Brit's brilliant. He remembered me now by my original name. We were going to do a film in Southampton because there was suspect of grooming over there.
Yeah.
And the Redfield Pill said they would help and that. Obviously, something pulled me back. This was about 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, Great Brit's one of the few people I trust, actually.
oh, definitely, I know that. Yeah, see, I've seen him.
A handful that I know are bang on, and then there's others that
Yeah, I know Great Brit is. I knew for ages. He realised who I was actually. Yeah, there's one of the few you can trust on the net, on it, and it's nice to have.
definitely.
Yeah. So I'm looking forward to what Tommy's going to be coming out with now.
Yes, so am I.
I can't wait. I can't wait for him to bring out that documentary. I know the difficulties, what he's going. People don't realise the difficulties. You can't just put it out there, you know, at the moment. But I'm looking forward to that. He looks like
he is back motivated and everything else. It'd be brilliant.
yeah, and Richard Inman done a live last night as well, didn't he? So
yeah, I saw that. Yeah,
and what was because I like listening to Richard. He's quite calm, isn't he, and a bit more. He talks a little bit of sense, and a bit, you know. I quite like Richard. Till he got taken down on Facebook, I was talking to him quite a lot. He's quite a kind-hearted person, actually. I might speak to Steve Avius if I can get hold of him.
Yeah, I did see it last. Well, I think so. I think I saw what you were talking about, Victor. I think what you're talking about.
Oh, there's that thing called Palestinian 179 station.
Yeah.
He's quite a nice bloke, actually. I went on there to confront Brian Hill.
Well, you were on there as well, did you?
I had to confront him because I found out it was him behind one of the accounts calling me a paedophile.
That Brian Hill's got an illness.
He's sick.
Yeah.
No
I just stay away from him. To be honest, I can't. I'm too focused on what I want to do to be wasting my time on people.
That's
like
what
that.
I'm doing. That's what I'm doing.
To deal with him, as far as I'm concerned.
I got porn bombed yesterday as well.
Yeah, they're doing it to a lot of the shows.
They came under Rodney's account.
Yeah, well, Rodney's got his own troll, but that's his own fault. He will talk himself.
Morning, El Sid. Oh, he makes me laugh, El Sid. He makes me laugh, that bloke. Things he was saying to bloody Captain last night.
Yeah, he is nuts, Great Brit. Did you watch out mine and Wendy's show where we played Brian Earl talking to Atheist Steve? If not, you missed out a blinder. Honestly, you missed out.
Yeah. He handled him really well, didn't he, Steve?
You could tell Steve was laughing as well.
Yeah, they were up against it. Well, Captain was going on about asking Emily about her kids and her mixed race kids. Then he went on to Dale, and Dale fucking put him in his place.
I know, but do you know how that come across? Because they were talking incognito. I thought, I hope people don't think it's me and Hector they're talking about.
No.
I know who it was. I know who she was talking about because I was around in the days when it happened.
Yeah.
It just crossed like they might have been talking about us, and I was like, I hope people don't think he was saying me because it ain't me.
No. She knew what he was on about because he's confused. he's confused with you know who because he's got mixed race children, and he can't understand why he's been like that if he's got mixed race children. And what was that other? Was it who was having a go at you and Wendy on a Facebook post?
Oh, I don't know. I didn't even get to watch it because I did get informed that it was going to go out, but I went over and looked at the person. I've never spoken to him.
Yeah, it turned out it was a myth thing. Yeah,
And they've only got 53 subscribers, and I thought, nah, if we focus on this, all we're doing is giving them publicity, and I've been down that road before. It ain't happening no more. So I just left them. Whatever they
sometimes the
want.
government throw in them trolls on purpose to do that. You know that they
Yeah.
throw.
What did the person say? What was it they were alleging?
It was about because you had a girl called Kaylee on one time.
Kaylee.
Yeah,
Oh, they're talking about Kaylee that Jason knows.
yeah, she came on one, and there was this person is a transsexual. Was in the what's her name? You seen her?
So her and Kaylee don't get on. Yeah, there's a lawsuit going on. Yeah.
Yeah, and well, she's having a go at you and Wendy because she's claiming you didn't let her on and things, blah blah blah. But apparently this happened about a year ago.
Yeah, is that all it was?
Yes, all it was, and it was turned out to be mad. That's it, Paris.
Yeah, I don't really care.
Nah, I thought fucking hell. I thought you two get unwanted shit. You know, it's unbelievable.
What it is it's fast becoming that they want to use my name to get a little bit of clout, and I ain't even nobody. I don't know how Tommy copes with it with so many people using his name. To be honest.
Exactly. Yeah, I've noticed it now. They, especially you, because you're more vocal. Well, Wendy's vocal, but I'm just saying because you're on the platforms more during the day, more than anything, they seem to want to get at you more. But what I have seen on Veli's channel, it's swerved a different way with some of the panelists now, hasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And Dave now, Dave's getting a little bit of respect from him, you know. I thought that was a good stream with that Jewish bloke on there yesterday, actually.
Yeah, everything takes time. But let me just say this: I think we're passing a point. Before I could see that there was a struggle, but we are actually winning the war. But the Tommy movement is actually coming back in full swing, and that's why they're stepping up. That they don't like it. They wasn't expecting the normies, because we are normies that follow Tommy, really, to put back such a fight. That's what they wouldn't do.
And I think they didn't. I thought they felt he would back down as well. I thought they would put. They think they put enough pressure on him, and they thought he would back down here. But he ain't gonna back down, is he? But then again,
no, not at all.
How's it gonna affect his mental health, though? At the same time, though, you know.
Listen, no one can take away from Tommy what he did.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, he's learned to be a bit more sensible how he does it, and these ethno-nationalists are not going to get anywhere. They're a fringe movement. They will never get into politics. Never get into politics. They might get one or two sneakily in, but they'll never get into politics. And let's be moral about it, right? I don't like the illegal immigrants. I think the illegal immigrants should go back. I don't like the terrorists. I don't think anyone that comes in that we find out as a terrorist should be sent back, rescinded. And anyone who leaves to go off these shores and fight against us, it should be done for treason. But apart from that, I don't want to take away the rights of somebody that's born in this country.
No.
I think it's born on the soil, whether you're Muslim or not. we have to deal with you with our own laws, and that's just the situation. I think our government have been responsible for some of the radicalising because they allowed a lot of shit to go on in Oxford. They allowed a lot of the
Yeah.
haters to go up there and say their pieces in all these universities, and
Mm.
they've encouraged this anti-white agenda. They've definitely encouraged it, and but as for the great replacement, I don't believe that it will happen. I think whites are still in the majority.
No, yeah, it's all bollocks. Because I tell you what, I live outside London, and I tell you what, there's no takeover here.
And
Yeah.
and I think that Ralph's just a scaremonger with his figures. And also, if people look, you would need every white person in Britain to suddenly decide that they want to be with a black person for the whole country to change colour. Number one, right?
Mm.
That's not likely to happen because throughout the centuries, it's been proven that most people tend to marry within their own race, like for like.
Yeah.
And normally, because actually there's a psychology that says it's been proven by science that you actually marry somebody that resembles your parents, actually, either through characteristics or the way they look, and it's subconscious. It's not done consciously, but that is a phenomena that goes on. And so most people marry within their own race. That's the fact. But the ones who don't, like myself, the ones who've got a partner outside their race, my mixed race children have got my blood flowing through their veins. They're still connected.
Exactly.
And this is what these nutters don't understand. And when people say that your kids, you know, you can't see that your kids don't look like the father or the mother, it's bullshit. I mean, look at Hector and my son now. Apart from the skin colour, you can tell it's his dad.
Of course, you could tell by the bone structure of the face and that. You could tell right, and your daughter as well. You could tell. You could tell by the cheekbones, with the eyes and that. Right? Oh, it's a lovely photo. Oh, there was something I was. I noticed there was someone in your chat called Jack Dawkins.
Yes.
That's not Jack Dawkins. Wouldn't do that. That's somebody phoning.
It was.
Was it?
Yeah.
That's unusual from him. He doesn't do things like that. He's quite a placid person.
Yeah, no, it was. I've had it vouched. It was.
Oh, what was it about?
He was upset that we were criticising Patriotic Alternative for getting too close to Mark Collett and Mark Collett's people.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Yeah,
that's a shock.
Yeah. It was a bit of a shock, actually. I think it was a shock for a lot of people.
Fucking hell.
Great Brit, check you know where.
Sure. He would be one of the least people. Oh, fucking hell. I'm really shocked by that.
So
I've double check, double check, yeah, because
no, I've got it on authority.
Really, fucking hell, what's up with them? God, that's one person that's really shocked me on, to be honest with you.
Yeah,
because he was the nicest bloke you could sort of know.
Yeah, a lot of people were shocked.
God, what is what's changing them? I just don't get it. And is it
people are being pulled further right, and there's a group of them that are pulling people further right, and it's not going to help them, and it's not going to help Tommy's movement.
Well, actually, it's going to do Tommy's movement a favour because they're away from it, aren't they? So,
yeah, but some really good people are being pulled and swayed over, And
Yeah.
we've got to start asking why. Why are they doing this? Why? It's all nonsense, you know.
Is it
But
money?
so there is a big fight on. There is a big fight on. But once they've shown their colours that actually they're racist, that's it. They're tarred. Once they've shown that they're in bed with the neo-Nazis, they're tarred. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah, it could be like a set up thing to take Tommy down, isn't it?
Quite sad.
Fucking hell. God, that's another shock then.
Yeah. Well, he only stuck up for Patriotic Alternative, but that was enough to show that. I mean, look, Patriotic Alternative hosted Horace. Horace is in connection with Mark Collett, has been promoted by Mark Collett, and in the streams where he was promoted by Mark Collett, Horace explained that he's close friends with Dion, Unwashed, and there was another one. And all those people have been great critics of Tommy and the Tommy movement.
Yeah.
And Active Patriot was telling all his followers to start following Horace. He said, "Oh, you know, you should follow Horace. He's a good guy. This, that, and the other." Horace is like one step away from Collett.
Yeah, and you got that other idiot, Chris. Oh, he's a fucking idiot. He used Tommy's name as his title for fucking years. He does that gripers roughing. He's a right tosser.
Yeah, but that's what he was. But that Active was being criticised for, and Jack come into the chat to say that we should leave Patriotic Alternative alone. And as me and Wendy said, we've got a right to talk about what we want to talk about, and we will continue to talk if we see something going wrong. And as Busker said, Busker's never going to give up policing the movement. But,
I haven't seen him about for a while.
So
he seems to have been going quiet.
Who, Busker?
Yeah.
No, he always shows up on our stream. He's always there. He was over on Richard's stream the other night. Yeah, he's around. Busker's around. He's doing his own thing, but he's around.
Yeah. Sure. Oh, yeah, he'll be doing his filming, innit? The lockdown.
No.
There's a lot of people sort of laying low a little bit, Jupiter, at the moment, don't they? Don't you think? Like, you would have a lot of people come over to your panel and they just, it's all gone quiet, isn't it? Just at the moment.
Well, what you got is a few people shocked at the fight back and how successful the fight back's been, and just our little power they've got. Yeah. Really, 2,000 people that probably support Mark Collett, and that's it. That's it. You've got 2,000 hardcore people that they seem to think that they're talking for the majority of Britain. They're not, and they're finally.
Oh, definitely not. Definitely not. Do you think Nick Griffin could be a threat now he's appeared?
No, nobody wants to support Nick Griffin. He got tarred years ago. We know that Nick Griffin would love to get back into the fold, but and he will be accepted by certain quarters, but he ain't going to be accepted by Tommy movement. He's nowhere near us.
I wonder if Tommy, sooner or later, join up with Anne-Marie Waters in the end. It's a party.
Who?
Tommy. Could you see like Nigel Farage bringing Tommy in with Anne-Marie Waters?
I don't know, to be honest. I don't know.
That'd be a tough party, you know. That'd be a good party, actually. I mean, I don't know much about Anne-Marie Waters, and I don't really like Nigel Farage because he's a bit of a snob. But
the problem with Farage is he let us down before, but he has seemed to have come back, and I don't know. I'm tempted to vote for him if he's got his new party now, isn't he?
It's just, I just think
we'll
he.
see how he's going and what he proposes and stuff.
Yeah, the only thing what worries me about him is the class divide with him. Yeah. Is the upper class going to benefit of this country and the working class is just going to forget?
Mm,
That's the only worry I got with Nigel Farage.
yeah.
You
But I
know?
mean, even Tommy recently said that he understands why Farage did what he did at the time.
Yeah. Yeah, well,
He
it
said,
did help when he was getting.
Farage. Anne-Marie Waters does seem like Great Brit said. Tommy does support him, but does support her. But we just have to wait and see. We just have to wait and see.
There's something that's got to change with these parties, and they're really, there's no one
Well,
to.
my vote is definitely going to a third party, whoever I think is suitable. It
Yeah.
is not going to Tory or to Labour ever again.
Mm.
Not until they sort themselves out or get a. Well, the left is just fucked. That's gone completely. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the right needs someone who's really strong, and I can't see anybody. I mean, when it comes down to the mayoral position, I will probably vote for Sean Bailey, who is Tory, but that's a bit.
I think you see a change in London with
not really much else there. I did quite like David Curtin, but he's gone a bit conspiracy theory. He's gone a bit mad.
Oh, was he? Because I just think it's nuts. I reckon they should have got their heads together to take Khan down. And I thought someone like David Curtin and Sean Bailey could have got together and done a joint.
I just want to do that. But the truth is, he probably will get back in because
more money. Yes.
No, because of the demographics of London now. So many people do vote for him. And Rich LK says Anne-Marie's among.
Hello, Rich. Yeah, I don't know much about her. Then again, like
I'd have to look at her. I'd have to look at her manifesto in depth because I know when she went on Manny's a few years ago, I didn't like some of the things that she said, but I'd have to.
Yeah, I mean, I really do like Sean Bailey and I really like David Curtin. I do like them both because I think they will sort London out. Actually, I think Sean Bailey is passionate at sorting London out, and I think he will do it. I think he will follow through his promises as well.
Yeah, see, that's the problem, Great Britain, isn't it? Every time. That is what the problem is. But we need a strong leader in the Tory party.
Or a new party. I mean, no, wouldn't it be great we had a movement party where it had all backgrounds pulling together for the same thing, wouldn't it?
That's what we actually need.
Yeah. Wouldn't it have black, Muslim, Sikh?
I think it will come. I think it will come. I've seen a real big shift in the last 6 months in the mindsets of people on these channels.
Well, I was speaking to my friend and he was saying, and he's a Muslim, he lives in London, he said the Muslim vote's going away from Khan. They're fed up with him. So he might not get in. He seems to think Sean Bailey's going to get there. The only place he's going to really, really get a big vote is in Tower Hamlets.
Well, I want Sean Bailey. If Sean Bailey got in, I'd be jumping for joy because I've been watching him in politics for quite a while, and he always says thing.
Yeah,
he always says things that I agree with. Whether when he gets in, he'll be different. I don't know.
No, I think he's sincere. I think he'll go. He said he'll be on the streets meeting people who need that help in that community, and he's been opposing Khan, and Khan was mocking him in that assembly, wasn't he? And no, Sean Bailey will do a good job. I'm really sure, and I think David Curtin would do as well. I think he has sort out the areas where there's problems, where no money should have been put in there. And I'll tell you why kind of lose, because he's got to explain why he pocketed 600,000 out of the housing money. Yeah,
Khan's just a fucking mug.
yeah.
That's all he is. He's a prejudiced cunt.
He must probably go for presidential. He will.
That's why I call him sad big cunt.
Yeah.
But what we've got to watch out for now is I don't think Boris is going to last much longer, right? This is what I believe. And when he goes, who's going to take the leadership? That's what we've got to watch out for.
Well, that's where Khan will try and get in. Yeah. Yeah, try and get in there. He was on about going into American politics, but that's what he's looking for, number 10. Yeah. But I think Priti Patel would be a different person if she got Boris Johnson away from her. I think she'll follow through some of her policies.
Well, I'd like to see her follow fucking through with something, because she says all the right things, but she just don't seem to always.
Oh, it's him, isn't he, pulling her back? Yeah, it's obvious. She got, you could tell by her manner she would follow it through, but Boris is being a prick, and he's playing games, isn't he?
We just have to wait and see.
It's a sad future for the country at the moment. It's never been in a good state. I mean, all right, we all complained about Margaret Thatcher, but at least she was strong.
Well, I know we're in. See, this is where I'm different to a lot of people. I think the future's bright now. I think that we're right in the middle of the confusing stage where where there's been a shake-up and it has to resettle. Like whenever you get new additions to an area, everyone has to resettle their positions. And I think this is a transitional stage. That's all it is. Look, I know we've got the COVID problem, but we will come out of COVID.
We will, if people by the rules and stay fucking in and not demonstrate.
We'll do well. I know it will. Within 5 years, I reckon we'll be on top. So that's a good thing to look forward to. And, I do think mindsets are changing. I really do. When I first come onto these channels, Easy, I don't know if you knew, because I've been on these channels for nearly 4 years now.
I've been here on now a year and a half now, and I have seen a difference.
I didn't. I mean, for 4 years, I didn't realise it was so long until the other day when I was watching something, and I was like, shit. I think it was Dave actually who was putting up the videos, and I was like, I was around for that. Fucking hell, 4 years. And when I first come onto these channels, Wendy was there slightly before me. When I first turned up, the abuse, we sort of arrived slightly. Well, I say she was here before me, but not really, because I was on other channels and she was on different channels, and then we sort of like culminated, and then from then on, whatever. But the abuse that we used to get just for being white, and don't get me wrong, there is still racial abuse towards whites, and you're never going to get rid of that completely anyway. But now there's a different level to it, or at least with me anyway. There's a different level to it. I mean, there are some things that I've reacted to in the past that I wish I hadn't, and there are some things that I wish I'd been more thoughtful about my speech, because they've been able to clip it, twist it, add new context to it. I mean, they even did it to me the other day when I was trying to establish when I was trying to make a point with Raj, because Raj calls it child marriage that was in the past with the gurus, but actually it's betrothal, right?
Yeah.
And I was trying to explain the difference between what went on in the Sikh religion to what goes on in the religion of Islam. And I went on and said, what is wrong with child marriage if there's no sex involved? The children are essentially married to each other, but they've not actually done the ceremony. And if they get to the age of consent, You know, they grow up in separate homes and then they get to the age of consent and they agree it and then get married. What's wrong with that? I don't. Even now, there's some tribes in Africa that do exactly that. Now I know that I wouldn't do it personally, right? I don't, because I'm westernized. But I have seen people that have had these families arranged for their children to be married when they're old enough. And the couples talk about how happy they are. And it's just a different mindset perspective. As long as they're not being forced into it, and as long as they're not being forced into sex before the age of consent, I don't see what the problem is.
Don't they in Raj community, what they do is they have the two families meet up and they just the kids and that actually get to know each other through the years. Then they arrange that marriage when they're leaving school, don't they? So they get to know each other, don't they?
They don't practice it no more anyway in Sikhi. It's something
okay.
practice.
Yeah.
You think of what they used to practice compared to around the rest of the world at the same time.
Yeah.
Where there's actual marriages to girls as young as 12, 13. Do you know what I mean? It's not actually that bad in the Sikhi religion because they betrothed them. They betrothed them and then later on they married. So they didn't marry at age 6 or 5 or 8 or 7 or 9 or 10. Do you know what I mean? They might have the families might have made an agreement. Yeah, these two will marry each other when they're old enough, but they never did at that age. Do you know what I mean?
They're not married. It's not like a 9-year-old marrying a 50-year-old, is it? So
yeah. But of course, they clipped the bit where I said, "What's wrong with child marriage?" and they've made it look like I'm agreeing with child marriage when actually they haven't put the full context of what I was saying.
Yeah.
And the only reason that I said marriage, because actually it meant it's betrothal, is because Raj was using marriage. He was calling it child marriage. But I'm not bothered. Let him go. Look, I've got so used to them now trying to trip people, them on my words, that I don't give a fuck. As long as I've got the original clip in, and as long as I can explain what I'm talking about, I don't care. I really don't.
You see, these religions, I wish they'd just let kids be kids and let them grow up and let them decide themselves what they want to do. Do you know what I mean? It's just.
Well, that's what. Look, that is our mindset. That's what I agree with. I think that, but that's why I say as long as it's not forced. Because when you sit down and think about it, it sounds abhorrent. But when you sit down and think about it, you've got one family that's got a daughter, you've got another family that's got a son. Those families know each other well. They want to keep the wealth. It's a bit like the royal family. They agree those children, when they're old enough, are going to marry.
Yeah.
And that's what they were in Sikhi, this is. And then the children still stay with their parents, grow up, and then when they get to the age of consent, you know, as long as they're not forced, as long as they both agree to it, I don't see what the problem is. I can't.
It's like they're just getting to know each other slowly.
If they're forced, then I'm against it. I'm really against it. But
so they've got a choice then, have they? They've got a choice to say no. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, so I knew that happened back in the day. Far as I can remember, but like, do you know what I like about Raj? He's always honest, isn't he? He won't do double standards. He will say it's wrong, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know. Yeah.
So, but that's what I was trying to. That's what was the discussion that I wanted to open up, and of course they've clicked the first little bit and fucking run with it. But that's right. It's all over.
Yeah, but more important though, Jupiter, what did the people on the panel think of that when you said that?
No, some understood it because what I'm talking about is because it still happens in some tribal countries now.
Yeah,
I've seen people that are adults that have spoken about getting into an arranged marriage and how they're happy.
Mm.
For them, they're happy. They know no different. And this is what people have to understand. As long as there's no coercion, and as long as there's no sex under the age of consent,
Yeah.
then that's how they want to do it in their region. I haven't got a problem with that.
Oh, so basically they're still staying with their families till they're older to do it. Yeah. Is that
Yeah.
what you're
So
saying?
it's like a betrothal, like an engagement. It's like a promise
Right.
to get married. You know what I mean?
Okay. So yeah, it's like keeping the wealth within the family as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
I don't know how often they do it now. I mean, maybe some Sikh families do it still. Maybe that they feel safe their kids are doing it because they know that person all their life. But I don't know what the situation is. Did Raj say?
He says they don't practice it no more anyway.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
says they don't practice it. But I just wanted to open up the discussion of
Mm.
why do people feel that it's wrong if there's no coercion and there's no sex under the age of consent. What is it that they're actually against? The fact that these children don't have a choice, but they do have a choice before they marry, and they're adults by the time they make the choice.
So they're not forcing like a young kid to
Yeah.
marry a 50-year-old.
Yeah.
Are they?
If you take the coercion out because it's not there, and you take out the underage sex, which would happen in Islam if you follow the Prophet. Yeah. If you take those two things out, what is it that you're against? The fact that they're not in love? It's not a love match.
And they've got
You know,
a choice to
that's
duck
what
out of it if they don't want it. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, I get it now. Yeah, I'll read more about that in the history later on, actually. I really see. I just see that Sikh religion a nice religion, but there's always flaws in certain religions, isn't there? I suppose. Quite interesting, actually. Damn, I was speaking now. You know when that Jewish guy was talking on Village yesterday.
Oh yeah.
Actually, I didn't like the way that God of Jacob was speaking to him, but I could see his point because I was looking at with Dell the day before, believe it or not, the
Oh
different
yeah.
tribes.
He's an umpty. He is Jewish, but he's a bit of a weird Jewish. He reckons that he gets stopped by the police because he's got a Jewish sticker on his car. Things like that. He's a bit nuts.
Well, that Jewish guy.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought, God, that's not Nova speaking, surely, and it wasn't.
Against the Jews.
Yeah.
I think he's getting a bit confused, really. But I do understand why some of them have got that mindset, because even Novia said he'd got to a stage where he'd seen so much of the radical channels on Speaker's Corner, you know, the ones that constantly go on about the Jews, that he felt that they'd been turned against.
Yeah.
And I had to explain to him, no, you're just seeing a minute portion of the country that are just very vocal at the moment on these channels. That's all that is.
Yeah. If you go actually outside in real life, you see a different, actually, you'll find a lot of people are not speaking like that. It's just a certain...
Hello, Royston of Batty. You're saying that Germany changed the rules so cousins can marry. Did you know that in Britain, first cousins can marry?
Can
Did
they?
you know that?
No.
Yeah. Yeah, it's legal in this country. I think it's wrong. It is legal.
Fucking yeah. Yeah,
First cousins can marry, but second cousins can't. Now that's weird, isn't it?
yeah, and you know what, that all comes down under religion, isn't it? Christianity, and
It's always been there. Look it up. Look it up.
yeah, I mean, like I said, I didn't realise about France till that came up on the news. Fucking hell. Sweden's one of the worst places as well.
I think that they've kept that clause because of the people that we've got. That's why I think they've kept that, because in British culture, it's not something it would be frowned upon. I think amongst the masses.
Would it be now for our new generation of people now? Would they frown on it now? The youngsters? Do you think they'll find it all right? But the way the mindset's changing at the moment in the
I don't
school?
know. That's an interesting question, actually, because there was that YouTuber, weren't there, in America
Yeah.
that was standing on the beach and he was asking people if a brother and sister
Yeah.
don't have children, can they have an incestuous relationship? And the amount of people that said they didn't see anything wrong with it in America, I was flabbergasted.
Yeah, because there's some states in America an adult can marry a 13-year-old, isn't it? Jerry Lee Lewis done it.
Tony Warren,
Yeah. I thought Jerry Lee Lewis and Woody Allen done it, didn't they?
well, Woody Allen done it with his daughter that he brought, that wasn't blood. She wasn't
Yeah.
a blood, but it was still wrong because he did raise her.
Yeah, because I remember Jerry Lee Lewis years ago.
Was she underage? I don't think she was underage. I don't know.
No, was it her daughter? The lady's daughter he married as well.
Oh yeah, but they tried to say that he tried it on with the son or something, didn't they?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Because apparently in the deep south they got a different law for that. That's where
They're all weird in Hollywood anyway, aren't they? All of them.
Oh God, aren't they? Christ.
There's a lot of such strange stuff that goes on with them celebrities.
That's why Donald Trump got out how he got out, because he was trying to take down the Hollywood elite and they all turned against him, didn't they? That's what it was all about. There was an agenda, wasn't there? Now you watch Tom Hanks and all that lot will be floating around there. They're making it they've been ill now. That sick bastard's in charge.
Yeah, well, the one they've got now is definitely a weirdo.
Oh, God, this is why I said we got to be worried now because he'll push the agenda to sexualise kids all around the world now. You watch that agenda, you'll see more programs on Netflix like Cuties. You watch.
Yeah. See, I don't really watch the TV or that no more.
Or do I? I haven't since I've come on here. I don't hardly watch it. It's ridiculous. I even cancelled the Sky.
Yeah, I reckon they're going to take it because even the BBC, they've lost so much money.
Yeah. Well, they're going to have to stop. There's going to be a law they can't charge you for the TV license soon. So.
Yeah, and so many viewers because people are just switching off.
Well, you know what's going to change it all is Amazon because Amazon are taking all the football away from Sky. And what's going to happen is that when you pay for your Prime, like $9.99, you could just watch it, and they're going to put it on terrestrial TV. So Sky's going to be out of business soon as well.
Oh, good! It's about time Murdoch took a hit.
And BT have sold off to EE now, so BT's gone now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah. No, our country will do all right. We're innovators.
Oh, of course we are. I don't know why people were worrying. We've survived before.
We're British people, we're survivors. Don't you worry about that.
Yeah.
When you look at what our relatives have been through just for us to be around now.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's when you realise, I mean, look, our relatives have lived through all those invasions from the Romans, the Saxons, the Vikings, white slavery that they choose to forget, white slavery, the Romans, the Saxons, the Vikings, poverty, workhouses. Do you know what I mean? All these orphanages, all these shit things that went on, the plague, First World War, Second World War, and we're here surviving.
And now on about the fruit pickers and the lettuce pickers. Look, if the top people are on top jobs that are going to be losing because of this COVID and these companies go down, they'll end up working as fruit pickers and they'll most probably put the wage up anyway. Do you know what I mean? So,
I watched Tim Paul and Zero for my news, Wendy's for the soaps, and I've got free sports.
I haven't watched Zero News for ages. I haven't watched him for a long time actually. I'll have to go over and watch him actually because he's gone over nearly 2 years now, hasn't he?
Mm.
Zero News, old Tom.
He's doing all right.
Yeah, he is, isn't he? Yeah, he lives not far from me actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't watch much TV now. I just watch the odd football match and that's it. I just don't. I'd rather listen to the radio or watch a documentary.
Yeah. It's just a shame the way it's all gone, but they can keep making their
And do you know how technology's going? I bet there'll be somebody who set up a British company to make mobile phones and things like that and computers. You watch.
We'd hope so.
Yeah, of course there'd be a market for it, wouldn't there? You know, they're just, you know, you were someone like Vodafone doing it or something like that, a British company, you know.
Oh, I've got a video that you can play actually, but you might not want to.
Go on, that's all right. Play
No,
it.
it's to do with respect, and you might not want to because you might not want to get dragged in. But I'll show you it anyway. I'll drop you the link, and then it's
Yeah.
up to you.
Actually, yeah, I might, because still, I think I could do without him getting on me, but I will.
Saying so, I'll just drop it for you to
Yeah.
look at your own time.
How long is it, Jupiter?
Oh no, not long at all. Let me find it.
Oh, fuck it, I'll just play it. Who cares? Why? You know, fuck it, I'll play it. He plays everybody else's. Right, I found a site for unlicensed music. It's not licensed. You can play on YouTube.
Oh yeah, where's that?
I'll send you a link by email. Actually, yeah, there's quite a few of them.
Oh, have you send it to Jupiter Affiliated.
Yeah,
Oh, okay, good. I'll have a look at that in a minute.
yeah, I'll send that to you.
Yeah, I'll drop the link for you in the YouTube side chat.
All right, I'll play it now. It's not strikeable from him, is it? No.
No.
Oh, okay.
Well,
I played this. That's okay.
it's not off his site.
Yeah.
It's from content that somebody else took in the park. So.
Oh, okay. I'll play it then. No, fuck it. Don't care what other people feel. I'm gonna be fucking silent. I'm sure you're playing my content. There we go.
No, it's not his content. It's someone else's.
Very low. Oh, it's Nova. I was that Russian guy.
That's what I want. Back in, fam. That's what you're getting me back into my head, fam. If I told you, you wouldn't be able to do nothing. You're not human. So why are you acting so bad? Look how many times I've stabbed you.
It's up high, Jay.
So this is an old video before he became Muslim.
Yeah, that's when he had that Russian took him on, didn't it? Yeah, that one. I remember that.
That's another good video as well. That Thomas Sowell. That's a good another one.
Ah, right. Have you put another one in? Are you coming on, Nova? I haven't spoken to you for ages. Have you? Thomas is that rich makes me laugh.
Thank you, Novia.
Have you? Did you
No.
put another one in the chat, Jupiter?
They're my children, Novia. Oh,
Did you put another one in the chat?
no, the video.
Okay.
The Thomas Sowell one. It's a bit long, but that's a good one to look at.
You should look at that Palestinian channel. He's quite a nice bloke, actually, Jupiter.
I've subbed there. I'm just watching for a little while first.
What do you think of it so far?
It's all right, but at the moment I can't tell. He's had some nutty people on. He's had her on that one.
Oh yeah, he's seen the poor bloke, hasn't he? Yeah.
I'll get you the one on Thomas Sowell that's worth watching.
Yeah.
You can stop and comment and do. Just say you're doing it as a review.
Yeah. Just say copyright.
Yeah, but this one's pretty good for people to watch. I don't know if you've read any Thomas Sowell.
No, I haven't. Not yet. No.
You don't know who he is. Yeah, he's a really good, interesting guy. Actually.
All right, we'll have a listen. You very rarely get striked on these kind of things now. Here we go.
This whole notion that the black family has always been disintegrating, that is nonsense. That his studies go up to 1925. The great bulk of black families were intact.
Yeah, I've heard of Tom McDonald's Wake Up. I promoted it ages ago.
So it is now only within our own time suddenly see this inevitable tragedy.
Yes.
Says it's going to rush into solve.
Oh, hang on.
40 years.
I've seen this guy before.
Thomas Sowell's writings continue to illuminate whether the topic is race, crime, immigration, or so many other subjects. His scholarship remains.
Yeah, you're not sharing it, is you? Are you? Oh, yeah, you are.
Yeah.
For themselves to everybody else.
Thomas
Sure.
Sowell is a trained economist. He's a
Can't you hear it?
Who has written books about every culture.
Is that better now?
He is a photographer. He is America's greatest contemporary living
Yeah.
philosopher. I'm Jason Riley. I'm a journalist and author. For more than 2 decades, I have closely studied the life and work of Thomas Sowell. His story is both fascinating and illuminating.
Tom makes a very, very good point that general principles affect everybody, whether they're black, brown, or purple.
Tom is fearless not just in advancing unpopular opinions, but in venturing into areas of scholarship that have been untrodden. Tom Sowell is known for his views on economics, history, race, and politics. But I've also discovered some lesser-known aspects of his life. His research and his writings about late-talking children, and the fact that he is a highly regarded world-traveling photographer. Over the next hour, we'll examine the life and career of Dr. Thomas Sowell, how he rose from humble beginnings to attend and teach at some of the nation's leading institutions, and became one of our foremost social commentators.
You were a Marxist at one time in your life. What was your wake up to what was wrong with that line of thinking?
Facts.
You're about to meet one of the greatest minds of the past half century.
Funding for this program has been provided by L.E. Phillips Family Foundation, Robert and Marion Oster, the Lined and Harry Bradley Foundation, Incorporated, DKT Liberty Project, the Charles and Ann Johnson Foundation.
Richard K. said Milton third was good to influence on Thomas.
And they were appalled. And I said, they have very high intellectual standards. And I'm not going to find ideological soulmates. I was still a Marxist. I took a summer job in the government as an intern in economics. And it was seeing the government from the inside that turned me around. The vision of the left, and I think many conservatives underestimate this, is really a more attractive vision in itself. The only reason for not believing in it is that it doesn't work. But you don't see that at the outset. If all you're looking at is just a theory, if the world were the way the left conceives it to be, it would be a better world than the way the right conceives it to be. It just happens that the world is not that way.
For me, Thomas Sowell is that rarest of species, an honest intellectual. He spent a career putting truth above popularity. He's explored the answers to questions others were afraid to even ask. He's followed the facts where they lead and accepted the findings, however unpopular or politically incorrect. Thomas Sowell fervently stands by his well-researched beliefs, and he does not hesitate to let someone know if he thinks they're wrong. I've spent dozens of hours interviewing Tom, and hundreds more selecting stories he's told over the years to others, to help us understand what makes Thomas Sowell unique. Sowell's body of work is quite vast.
So he was a
Covering
Marxist
everything
then?
from economics and history to
He
culture,
was, but he changed.
race,
Listen
and
to his
equality.
reasons why.
The main thing that he's done, in my opinion, is to cause people to rethink their assumptions about all sorts of things, not just economics, but about race, about politics, about how we get along.
Tom is absolutely fearless. He's forceful in his opinions. He will not compromise any of his opinions for the sake of social politeness. How do you take the measure of a man, especially if he's someone who's impacted our thinking about politics and economics for more than half a century? Do you do it through his deeds or influence? Or by what he says or writes? Perhaps Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said it best. The ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in moments of comfort and convenience, but where he stands at times of challenge and controversy.
The media, the television and the print media, they've wised up. You can't argue with Tom, so you might as well hide what he's doing. And that's what they're doing. They're just ignoring what he's written because there's no way that they can argue with Tom Sowell.
What distinguishes Thomas Sowell's scholarship? First, intellectual honesty, asking the right questions, gathering the relevant data, and following the facts to their logical conclusion, even if that conclusion turns out to be unpopular. Second, the importance of incentives and the reality of trade-offs in addressing our social problems. Third, the belief that a group's upward mobility derives primarily from its development of human capital. And finally, Sowell has an abiding respect for social processes and existing institutions and the role they play in decision-making. So where did Tom Sowell's ideas come from? What formed the foundation of a man who would go on to become one of the country's foremost public intellectuals? That story began 600 miles to the south of Midtown Manhattan, more than 8 decades ago. Thomas Sowell was born in Gastonia, North Carolina, on June 30th, 1930. The Great Depression was just getting underway. And like many blacks in the South at the time, his family had no electricity, no central heating, and no hot running water. Sowell's father died before Tom was born. And his mother, a maid, died in childbirth just a few years later.
He was adopted by his great aunt and raised by her and her 2 daughters. So he was raised by 3 women.
My whole career would not have been possible without the particular family in which I was raised, which was not composed of educated people. I mean, nobody in that family had ever graduated from high school, and most did not graduate from grade school. But they were interested in education, and they were interested in me.
Tom was raised by a great aunt and her adult children. The family moved to New York City's Harlem neighborhood, a migration that exposed him to better schools and more opportunities than were available to blacks in the segregated South.
My great fear is that a black child growing up in Harlem today will not have as good a chance to rise as people of my generation did, simply because they will not receive as solid an education in an era when such an education is even more important.
When Thomas Sowell was 8 years old, his family moved from North Carolina to New York City and settled here at 720 St. Nicholas Avenue in in the neighborhood of Harlem. The building looks pretty much the same as it did more than 80 years ago when the Souls moved in. Young Tommy, as he was called, ventured out into a big city for the very first time. He rode double-decker buses and learned to cross busy streets, all by himself.
We were much poorer than the people in Harlem, almost anywhere else today. It was my last year or two at home that we finally had a telephone. We had a radio. We never had a television. But in another sense, in the sense of the things you need to get ahead, I was enormously more fortunate than most black kids today.
While coming of age in Harlem, Soul discovered the magic of education, thanks to a family friend named Eddie Mapp.
In Harlem, there was a kid named Eddie that members of the family had run into before I ever arrived from North Carolina. He came from a highly educated family, and they immediately saw the implications if they could get him to mentor me.
Eddie brought Tom here to the Harlem Public Library, taught him how to find books that interested him, taught him how to check them out.
And I saw all these books, and I had no idea why we were there when I don't have any money to buy one book. And so what am I going to do with all these, hundreds of books up on the shelf?
Crossing the threshold to this new world was the first step on a path young Tommy might not otherwise have taken.
And he very patiently walked me through the whole thing. And again, I was very reluctant to take out a library card because I didn't know what all this is about. But he talked me into it. Then I borrowed a couple of books. And really, had I not encountered him, the entire rest of the story could not have been the way it was. I mean, at some point, I would have learned what a public library was. But by that point, it would be too late. When you start getting in the habit of reading when you're 8 years old, that's a different ballgame than if you have to wait till you're a teenager. It's too late now.
Thanks to that same friend Eddie, a young Tom Sowell was pointed in the right direction regarding his schooling. The grade school he attended in Harlem was a good one. But when it came time for junior high school, the one in Tom's neighborhood was not so great.
When I finished elementary school, and they assigned me to a junior high school in a very bad neighborhood, and he told me that you can get transferred. And I got transferred to a much better school. Had I gone to that other school, again, the story would have been entirely different.
He would become a firm believer in allowing parents to choose the best school possible for their children, whether it be private schools, religious schools, or even the option that sparks intense debate among lawmakers and educators today, charter schools.
There are few things more dishonorable than misleading the young.
The abysmal quality of education available in the ghettos today is one that I really don't think the worst possible private school could match. 40 years ago, I received a far better education in Harlem than the people who are living in Harlem today have available to them.
It's 8 a.m. at the Success Academy School in Harlem, New York. This is a charter school, an example of educational choice for people trying to better themselves despite the circumstances they were born into. For Tom, this is education done right.
Professor Sowell has been a leader in supporting all forms of school choice, and I very fundamentally agree that we need more choices, not fewer. I think we particularly need that for our most vulnerable populations.
Back in 1978, when there was a push for a voucher scheme, the New Republic objected. In their words, the least educated, the least ambitious, and the least aware would be left in the public schools.
Professor Sowell grew up in Harlem. I grew up in Harlem. And the schools there have been a disaster for half a century. And so you have generations of kids who have not gotten the education that they deserve and are entitled to.
Charter schools are public, tuition-free schools that are open to all students and able to operate independently from the traditional school district. They are given the autonomy to design a curriculum tailored to the needs of their students. But they must also meet academic standards set by state and local officials. Unlike traditional public schools, however, charter schools that don't meet these standards can actually be shut down.
With respect to education, Tom would say it doesn't make any difference how much money you put in education, but if there are not some basic factors that you must take into account, that is, in order for a kid to get a good education, somebody must make him go to bed on time. Somebody must make him do his homework. Somebody must make him mind the teacher. Somebody has to get him up in the morning. And if those things are not done, I don't care how much money you put into education, you're not going to get very good results. And that is precisely what we see.
For decades, Seoul has been a strong supporter of charters and other education options for families trapped in underperforming schools.
There are, as you said, many blacks today who are still being given totally inadequate education, cannot be expected to get very far for that reason. What would be your remedy for that?
I would allow their parents to have a choice of where to send them to school, whether that choice is called a voucher scheme, open enrollment, tuition tax credit, any kind of scheme of that sort. That would put
Look at that people.
parents, mainly because that would mean that the schools would have to be responsive to them. As it is now, the school is a monopoly. They need not be responsive. It is hard for me to understand what harm is going to be done by allowing parents to have a choice as compared to having self-interested bureaucrats have a monopoly.
The things that they thought were going to help did not help, and in many cases, made things much worse.
Thomas Sowell is a very private person. Despite having so much of his work put before the public, he's reluctant to give interviews and has been known to make journalists wait years before sitting down to talk about his life and work. But a colleague of mine took the time to get Tom to appear on his show.
I'm Dave Rubin. I'm the host of The Rubin Report. That's right back behind me here in my home. I do a long-form interview show. Everybody was saying, you got to talk to Thomas Sowell. You've got to talk to Thomas Sowell. And we tried for about 3 or 4 years to hunt him down. And finally, we were able to interview him. One of the things that I found out that was sort of amazing about your history, you briefly mentioned it right before we started. You were a Marxist at one time in your life. Most people will find this hard to believe, but it is true.
But it's not that unusual. Most of the leading conservative thinkers of our time did not start off as conservative. You had a couple like Bill Buckley and George Will. But I mean, Milton Friedman was a liberal and a Keynesian. Ronald Reagan was so far left, at one point the FBI was following him.
Do you remember sort of what you were thinking what appealed to you at that time about Marxism?
Yes, I mean, there was no alternative being discussed.
I treated my interview with him as Thomas Sowell 101. I wanted it to be for the new generation of young people who watch YouTube, who listen to podcasts.
My first job was as a Western Union messenger. So I would take the Fifth Avenue bus. It would go all the way up Fifth Avenue, past all these Lord and Taylor and all these fancy places. And then I would cross 57th Street, down Riverside Drive. And then as I came across this long viaduct that turned into 135th Street, suddenly there were the tenements. And I wondered, why is this? It's so different. And nothing in the schools or most of the books seem to deal with that. And Marx dealt with that.
There's an absolutely beautiful moment where I ask him about his own political evolution. So then what was your wake up to what was wrong with that line of thinking?
Facts.
I love that moment. I mean, I knew the second he did it, I was like, we got our clip. That's as good as it gets. And it gets to, what does this man care about most? Does he care about how he feels about things, how he wants the world to be, or how is the world as it is? Because that's what he's saying. I care about facts. The world is a certain way, and now, using that as the baseline, we can try to figure out how to make things better.
Drafted in 1951, Tom joined the Marines, where he taught pistol shooting and took photographs. In fact, Soule was part of the Marine Corps Combat Camera Division.
Combat Camera is responsible for the historical documentation. It may not necessarily make it out to the paper, but somewhere down the line, someone might be able to pull up an image and say, okay, this happened during this time frame. The imagery is used as good reference to anything we may need in the future or something that's happening right now.
Although Thomas Soule left the Marines long ago, his legacy lives on today with some members of the Combat Camera Corps, who as young men discovered Soule's work.
When I was a young person, I used to like to stay home from school occasionally, like to play hooky or pretend I was sick and stay home. But unlike most kids who would, cut class and do whatever, I would watch videos of Thomas Soule on Milton Friedman's show, Free to Choose, and he would just wipe the floor with people from the other side of the aisle that didn't seem like know what they were talking about. These were very smart people, but Thomas Soule was so much smarter and so much more intelligent and so much more articulate that he would just make them seem like bumbling idiots, and I just thought that was awesome.
When the private sector fails to create jobs at a fast enough rate, you find that people are unemployed and drift into needing help. I think it is overly broad to say that we turn people into helpless children.
I don't remember talking to anyone who's ever been on welfare who didn't think they were being treated like children while they were on it.
The lessons Soule learned in the Marines would stay with him for the rest of his life, especially his love of photography, which would become Tom's artistic outlet while he pursued a life filled with studying facts and data. Photography did have connections to his vision of reality. Tom once commented to me that to be a photographer, you have to master trade-offs. All of the little adjustments that you fiddle with in the camera never involve making everything better or everything worse. It's a matter of trading one thing off for another. If you close down the diaphragm, then you get lots and lots of stuff in focus near to far. On the other hand, you're cutting down the amount of light. And a theme in Tom's work on society is that all policies involve trade-offs. And Tom often loses patience at people with sweeping visions. Here's how we can improve society. Here's a solution to a problem. And Tom points out in his political writings, there are no solutions, there are only trade-offs. Just like photography. The University of Chicago is hallowed ground for Thomas Soule. Here's where some of the most influential economic philosophies of modern times were formed. It's called the Chicago School of Economics. And it's where Tom would be mentored by intellectual giants like George Stigler and Milton Friedman, both of whom would go on to win the Nobel Prize in economics.
I was a graduate student here from 1960 to 64. The thing I learned as a graduate student was economics is straightforward and simple when you grasp its underlying logic. And secondly, that logic can be applied seriously to understand many different things about the world.
Chicago, if it was true because you could prove it was true. It was true because you had the evidence, you had the logic, and so forth. They explored the specific ways in which the market does and doesn't work. The idea, that people are rational on the whole. And that if you allow those people to operate in the marketplace, you'll generally get better results.
The Chicago School of Economics is where Tom says he understood the importance of discipline and the importance of getting hard data. In fact, he talks more positively about his experience at University of Chicago than at Harvard, where he says a lot of people, in his opinion, went on emotion. Tom was a Marxist when he took a course with Milton Friedman, and at the end of the course, he remained a Marxist. But what he appreciated was that at University of Chicago, economics was a full contact sport where you had to defend your position rigorously, otherwise you got wasted. And so at least Tom Sowell said he came out understanding the importance of hard data.
I mean, I was still a Marxist after taking Milton Friedman's course. But one summer in the government was enough to let me say, no, this government is really not the answer. I mean, that is...
Milton Friedman didn't cure you, but the federal government did.
The federal government did. So never say the federal government doesn't do anything. My first
now easily.
Yeah. Hang on.
And watch this, because
One
it's
of my
much
biggest concerns was
now
about-
you've got a bit of an understanding of who he is,
Yeah.
right? Watch this one that I'm dropping now.
Righty. Let me get that.
So I saw on your profile that you like to cook.
Oh, I love it.
Barbie and Fish have known each other for a long time.
What's going on there? Oh, let's get there. He's quite an interesting character, isn't he?
Yeah, it's good that you know his background so that when you hear him being interviewed,
Yeah. He's quite an interesting character.
We're live on location at Stanford University, and joining me today is an economist, author, scholar, senior fellow at the Hoover Institution, and living legend, Dr. Thomas Sowell. Welcome to the Rubin Report.
Well, thank you. Good to be with you.
I feel I have to get the gushing out first. That way we can focus on the book. I don't know that there's anyone on this mortal coil whose writing and thinking has influenced me more than you. So this is truly an honor for me, and I just have to get that out right at the beginning.
I just hope I haven't misled you.
Yeah. We'll find out. I'll let you know at the end. So first, I thought I want to do a little bit on your history, and I want to focus on your new book. But I was curious if you have a sense of the sort of renaissance that your writing is having right now with young people. Because when I tweeted out that we finally had you on the show, and we've been trying to make this happen for quite some time, I mean, thousands of responses. And I had tons of people just say, please tell him this, tell him this. My awakening was because of Dr. Sowell, all of this. Are you noticing something happening right now because of the unique place where
I only know what people tell me. That's even true at Stanford.
Yeah.
I only know what my research assistants tell me.
All right. Well, I will certainly accept that. Well, take my word for it then. So I want to talk a little bit about your history for a bit, and then we'll move on to your new book. Born North Carolina.
Yes.
Grew up in the Bronx.
Harlem.
In Harlem. Tell me a little bit about some of your formative years.
Well, you know, I thought about it as I was doing the research for the first chapter, where I get into the birth order thing. Now, had my my parents lived a normal lifespan, I would have been the sixth child in the family. They died young, and so I was adopted in infancy, in a family as an only child, raised as an only child in a home with 4 adults. And in terms of what I found about the research on birth order, clearly that was a huge advantage. And so their misfortune was my good fortune. And moreover, the family in which I was raised moved to New York, which at that time had a far superior educational system to that in North Carolina, and far superior to what it is today.
Were you always interested in education? I mean, even as a young
No. I mean, a little kid. There was nothing in my background that would have done put me there. But fortunately, in Harlem, there was a kid named Eddie that members of the family had run into before I ever arrived from North Carolina. He was came from a highly educated family, and they immediately saw the implications if they could get him to sort of mentor me. And now, had I met Eddie on my own, chances are I would never have seen any significance He would just have been one of the people I passed by. But of course, the adults understood what the future was like and thinking about things that kids don't think about, despite the great worship of child talkers these days. So he took me to a public library, and I had no idea what a public library was. Wow. I was 8 years old. And I saw all these books, and I had no idea why we were there when I don't have any money to buy one book. And so, what am I going to do with all these, hundreds of books up on the shelf? And he very patiently walked me through the whole thing. And again, I was very reluctant to take out a library card because I didn't know what all this is about. But he talked me into it, and I borrowed a couple of books. And really, had I not encountered him, the entire rest of the story could not have been the way it was. I mean, at some point I would have learned what a public library was, but by that point it would be too late. Yeah. I mean, when you start getting the habit of reading when you're 8 years old, that's a different ball game than if you have to wait till you're a teenager and it's too late now.
Dare I ask if you have any recollection what you might have taken out of the library at 8 years old?
One of the books was the Dr. Dolittle books. I don't know if you even know what those are. You can talk to the animals.
Yep.
Alice in Wonderland, and the rest of them. But I came in on May, and school wasn't open until September, so I had no one to play with, and I was just bored to tears. And so I started reading, really for the first time, and I got the habit of reading. And on that, that made the rest possible.
Yeah. Were there any other formative things that happened to you over those younger years?
Yes, the same fellow was very knowledgeable about the school system. So when I finished elementary school, and they assigned me to a junior high school in a very bad neighborhood, he told me that you can get transferred. And I, in fact, got transferred to a much better school. Had I gone to that other school, again, the story would have been entirely different. One of the themes of the early part of the book here is that there are a whole number of things that have to come together. And if you don't have all of those prerequisites, then whatever good qualities you have don't matter. I mentioned illiteracy, that, in the middle of the 20th century, something like 40% of the adults in the world were still illiterate. And so it doesn't matter what their native talent or any of that came along. You can't read. There are a whole lot of occupations you just simply can't get into.
Yeah, so it's pretty clear from all the reading of yours that I've done, you put education basically is number one, right? I mean, is that the number one thing that you can do as a human being? Get educated?
I guess, although I wouldn't carry it too far, because some of the most disastrous notions in the world have come from highly educated people with, I'm sure, high IQ.
So perhaps critical thinking with a little education.
I will settle for almost any kind of thing. It's so rare these days.
It is oddly rare. So one of the things that I found out that was sort of amazing about your history, you briefly mentioned it right before we started. You were a Marxist at one time in your life. Most people will find this hard to believe, but it is true.
But it's not that unusual. Most of the leading conservative thinkers of our time did not start off as conservative. You had a couple like Bill Buckley and George Will, but I mean Milton Friedman was a liberal and a Keynesian. Hayek was a socialist. Ronald Reagan was so far left at one point the FBI was following him. So there's a huge movement from the left to the right as people get older.
Yeah, I'm well aware, as I mentioned to you earlier, as a former progressive, I understand that movement in the modern sense. Do you remember what you were thinking, what appealed to you at that time about Marxism?
Yes, I mean, there was no alternative being discussed. My first job was as a Western Union messenger, and I would come home on some nights. I would take the Fifth Avenue bus, which cost all of 15 cents in those days, but I figured I'd splurge now and then. And I would drive with Fifth Avenue past all these Lord & Taylor and all these fancy places. And then I would cross 57th Street past Carnegie Hall and down Riverside Drive, and that was sort of the Gold Coast area. And then as I came across this long viaduct and that turned into 135th Street, suddenly there were the tenements. And I wondered, why is this? I mean, It's so different, and nothing in the schools or most of the books seem to deal with that, and Marx dealt with that. So it's like winning an election when there's only one person running.
So then, what was your wake up to what was wrong with that line of thinking?
Facts. Well,
we could probably end the interview right there.
Yeah,
Facts. There you go.
And specifically, my first professional job, I was a summer intern at the U.S. Department of Labor, and I realized from dealing with these people that the U.S. Department of Labor, one of my biggest concerns was about minimum wages. It has been for a long time. And so at first I thought, well, this is good because all these people are poor and they'll get a little higher income, and so that'll be helpful. And then as I studied economics, I began to see, well, there's a downside; they may lose their jobs completely. So that is that. And so when I was at the Labor Department, I tried to talk about that to them, and eventually I came up with some test of it. And when I came up with this test, how we might test this, I was waiting to hear congratulations. You see that I had this, and I could see these people were stunned. They said, "Oh, this idiot has stumbled on something that will ruin us all." Wow. you know? And I realized the U.S. Department of Labor had its own agenda and interests, and that did not necessarily mean that whether poor people lost their jobs for minimum wages or got higher pay was their highest priority.
Yeah. How much longer did you last at the department?
That was really the turning point. They have their own institution.
There you go.
So as you can see here, right, he's followed the trajectory that most of us follow. Okay.
Yeah.
We all start off on the left, and as you progress, you begin to realise that actually left politics don't work. And the reason why this happens is because a lot of the schools are indoctrinated, like and swimming around with all these lefties. Okay. And it's all leftist and Marxism and communism and all these socialism, all these lefty agendas that are being thrown at us throughout our school and educational years. But the amazing thing is when you go out into the real world and you start to work in these departments, you start to realise that these ideals fall down.
Exactly.
And I can give you one real life example. When I went to work, I found I worked with a lot of BAME people, black and ethnic minorities.
Yeah.
And I found that there was a lot of racism towards white people actually within the company. But the equality laws, even though they're meant to represent white people as well, and that's another video I'll get up for you in a minute, it's never quite upheld in that way for white people. It's only for black people, and you realise.
I thought it was for minorities. Yeah, always for.
Oh, it's not just minorities, and I'm going to bring a video up to prove that in a minute. But yeah. So this is. It's not unusual that this happens. This happens with a lot of people.
Yeah.
A lot of people. But what's refreshing about politics at the moment, is that the what they call the Z generation, they are they've jumped the left side and they're already on the right, so they're already with reality. They're the ones that are coming behind this soft snowflake nation that we've got at the moment. So let's carry on and listen to it. I know.
And you saying that, and that's happening in the hospitals. It's happened ages ago with the unions in the hospitals, yeah, pushing all of this left agenda. And that's what's happened in the hospitals. That's what's killing the hospitals at the moment, the National Health Service.
Incentives. And you cannot say that the government will step in and do what's right for these people and whatnot, because they'll do what's right for themselves.
So I think a lot of people watching this, and I know because I've been so open about my own sort of awakening, are going through this right now. They're realizing that the things that they've been taught for so long are not the truth and are not based in fact. When that happened to you and you started telling other people, not just the people you were working with, be it family or friends, what kind of pushback did you get? Because it was sort of radical ideas in a way that you were talking about.
Well, I didn't feel any need to do a lot of proselytizing. it was enough for me that I was now beginning to understand things I hadn't understood before. And the other thing, getting back to my personal development, I mean, I left home when I was 17, no high school diploma, no skills, no job experience. And I discovered that there was not a huge amount of demand for people like that. But in retrospect, decades later, when I do research, I realized that in 1948, the unemployment rate for black 16 and 17-year-olds was 9.4. For whites the same age, it was 10.2. And those numbers are much smaller than we're used to in recent decades. And there's no serious racial difference. In fact, the blacks in my age bracket were doing just slightly better. And of course, one of the things that the minimum wage law does is that it creates unemployment, raises it to multiples of what it was. 1948 was a special time because the minimum wage law was passed in 1938. And in the intervening 10 years, there was huge inflation and the law hadn't gotten changed. And so for all practical purposes, there was no minimum wage law. But had we had these wonderful liberals insisting that I be paid a living wage that would support a family of four, I would have been unemployed. And I don't know what that would have led to.
Right. It probably would not have led up to everything else. So when you think about these wonderful liberals, as you just said, I think there's sort of two lines of thinking. One is that, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. I try not to besmirch.
And it's a super highway.
It's a super highway, exactly. I try not to besmirch their intentions. But then I think there are people that are either have confused thinking or have ulterior motives or what else. What do you think it is? As someone that is so based in fact, and we're going to get to plenty of that fact in a moment, what do you think the thinking is, the flaw in the thinking?
Oh, I think it's the idea that you don't have to check a good sounding idea against what actually happens. The whole there are people to this day who think that the 1960s was just a great period. And I'll say to them, do you realize how many good trends, the murder rate among black males had been going down for 2 decades. By 18% in one decade, 22% in the next decade. And in 1960, it suddenly takes a U-turn straight up. And that was not peculiar to blacks or even to the United States. Pinker's book about violence, that throughout the Western world, the homicide rates did a U-turn in the 1960s. So the question is, what actually happens when you put your wonderful ideas to work? Do they produce the kind of thing you thought they were going to produce? Or do they produce all the opposite in many areas? And they produce lots of opposites.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Steven Pinker. I had him on the show a few weeks ago. And yes. I think he's one of the clearest thinkers we have. And, his new book, Enlightenment Now, is that things are trending more positively. But even hearing that is very hard for a lot of people.
Well, it depends on what your baseline is. Pinker is much more optimistic than I am. I happen to be very pessimistic about the future, but I hope the optimists are right.
Do you think you're a pessimist by nature?
No, but I think having studied so many things that sounded so good and ended up so bad, it makes me doubt, especially when there are people who are anxious to spout off with very little study of what they're talking about.
Yeah, we've got a lot of that these days. Do you think that has ramped up, or
yeah.
I think social media seems to amplify things, but do you think it's always been that way, about just sort of this endless pontificating of people that really don't know what they're talking about?
Well, there's always been that, as long as there have been human beings. But the question is the magnitude of it, and the ability of various institutions to shut out any other viewpoint, and of which the universities are the worst examples.
Yeah.
That when I see the riots when Charles Murray shows up, and I happen to know Charles Murray. I mean, if you can demonize Charles Murray, you can demonize anybody.
Yeah.
I mean, and I listen to see what are they going to quote that he said. I've never heard a single quote of it. All the books the man has written, they never quote anything he said.
Yeah.
And a lot of what he said is the direct opposite of what they claim he said.
That tells you a little bit about sort of the state we're in right now.
Yeah.
So this thing that's happening on college campuses right now that everyone seems to think is freezing free speech, and it seems to be speech that's generally thought of as right. So it's conservatives, libertarians, further people on the right than that. You're saying that's really not a new phenomenon. You were kind of
well, it was not that bad in the 1950s when I was a Marxist, and when Senator Joe McCarthy was tracking down anybody on the left. But I said whatever I felt like, wherever I felt like it, and I got no such blowback.
That's really interesting. So McCarthy's talking about all this stuff, but you had no problem being an open Marxist.
He was in Washington, I was in Cambridge.
Yeah.
So be it.
Yeah. So you do think something has gotten worse now?
Oh, no, there's a number of things. Venereal diseases, for example, were going down at a very steep rate. It was either syphilis or gonorrhea that was 1/2 as prevalent in 1960 as it was in 1950. The brilliant idea was to bring in sex education, you see, to avoid unwanted pregnancies and so on. And venereal diseases skyrocketed. Unwanted pregnancies, teenage pregnancies skyrocketed. It's amazing that so many people on the left are able to just ignore any facts that go against their theory.
Yeah.
I mean, it just does not. My old mentor at the University of Chicago, Joyce Stigler, argued, however, that economists have very little influence, and what they say makes very little difference. And he was giving a talk at the Hoover Institution once. He said, thanks to years of dedicated work by Tom Sowell, the next minimum wage increase will be 5 cents an hour less than it would have been otherwise.
Well, that's what's interesting to me, is because as I preface this with you, I think that the writings that you've done all these years in these books, they're becoming culturally relevant, maybe in a way that they weren't. I don't even want to say it this way, but maybe in a way that they weren't economically relevant. Do you understand the point there? That I think there's a cultural relevance to all the things that you've done for these last 40 some odd years that seems so actually powerful and impactful to me right now, which is incredible.
Well, when it comes to impact, that's a different story entirely. I mean, long ago, I stopped accepting invitations to testify before congressional committees. It's an absolute waste of time. They have made up their minds, and they just want to be able to say they've heard all points of view.
And then it pretty much stops there.
That's right. And I remember once Kenneth Clark, I was debating him, and he was beside himself because of my supposed sinister influence in Washington during the Reagan administration. I told him, if my influence in Washington is all you have to worry about, you are very fortunate.
Right, stop it.
I can't think anything that happened any different than if I had never said anything to anybody.
Is there?
No, I'm just realistic. I mean, I can't find. I can remember testifying before one committee, and the audience was so rowdy that the chairman had to bang the
fall asleep.
Shut them down. And they put some little tiny thing in the law they were building, and I would bet the rent money that provision is gone now because there are so many people who didn't. I was saying that if you're going to help our poor kids, then give the money to the kids, or else provide it for wherever they go. Don't turn it over to the institution, because they will then use it in an entirely different way.
Are there any examples where the money is turned over to the institution, whatever the institution might be, where it really does work? Are there any aberrations in most?
There must be somewhere by the law of averages, but it is not prevalent.
Yeah. So a couple times you've mentioned liberals, and one of the things that I talk about on my show often.
Easy, did you fall asleep?
I was elected. And I've tried to make the point that being a liberal in the traditional sense has very little, if anything, to do with it.
Did you want me to stop?
Yeah, I wanted to say something. Yeah, so notice that Thomas Sowell's talking about free speech. And again, this is something that we see on these channels. Okay?
Yeah.
That so many people want to try and silence the other side. They don't want to enter into discussion. They use the technique of, I want to debate you. So that there's always a winner and a loser instead of open discussion to find solutions. And this is something that I keep pushing, and I will continue to push. That discussion is better than debate. Debate is It's set up as a way to sort of like
It's a
dehumanize
diversion.
one person and to promote the other person, whereas discussion is meeting on equal terms, and you can still walk away holding your own views, but having discussed something and maybe taken away from each other. So
It's a diversion. The debate. It's
yeah,
never fair. Discussion like this is very good.
yeah. So I really do think that discussion is the way to go.
This is
Anyway,
what I'm trying to do on this channel. That's what I'm trying to do. It's getting there, but it's hard work, Jupiter. Do you know what I mean?
yeah. So because it is quite boring to listen to, I know. I mean, I enjoy it, but I know that.
No, I'm listening to it because you're learning. You see, you're learning from their perspective, and a lot of people are interested in. You look in the chat. How many people have been watching him before? So he's a very interesting character.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's up to you. Do you want to continue with this
Yeah,
one?
of course. No, let's carry on.
Go on then. Continue.
Are there any? Do you see any sort of meaningful distinction between classical liberal and libertarian at this point, or do you see? But I'll ask you a couple of things at once, and you can go any direction. Do you see any? Do you see a difference, of course, between liberals and the left? I mean, the words have all sort of.
Yeah, Milton Friedman used to always say that he was a liberal, so did Hayek. And of course, in different countries, the word means different things. In Australia, if you said you were a liberal, they would understand what you were saying. But
Excuse
a
the
liberal
noise,
in Australia is different from a liberal in the United States.
Yeah. So when you say liberal, you mean left, basically.
Yeah, the American sense of the word.
Yeah. Do you think there's any sort of real distinction that needs to be made between classical liberal and libertarian? That's one of the things that people ask me all the time. And I know you're not big on labels generally, but I did read something where you said that the closest thing you get labeled as is libertarian. Is that still where you're at?
Yeah, except of course the foreign policy.
We can talk about that too.
And I guess also the libertarians seem to have this atavistic view of the world, which I think is completely unrealistic.
Yeah. So
because not only in my life, but in my life around me, the surroundings, I think a huge difference. One of the things I get into a lot in the book is the disparities imply either discrimination on the one hand or genetic differences on the other. And disparities are the norm. I mean, I was just reading something the other day, that Latin America has 8% of the people in the world. They commit 38% of all the murders. And in Latin America, 38% for that. But in Latin America, 80% of the murders occur on 2% of the streets.
Wow.
So, but when you find that, when you look up facts, that's what you find over and over again. And in all the discussions of income differences, they never take into account age, and age is huge. I mean, Japanese Americans have a median age of 50. Hispanic Americans have a median age of 26. Now, when you see Hispanic Americans greatly overrepresented among baseball stars, and not a single Japanese American baseball star in the major leagues, I don't believe in the entire history.
Yeah. Well, we had Ichiro on CNN.
No. That was, there are people of Japanese ancestry who have become baseball stars.
Yeah.
All of them are from Japan. None of them are by Japanese American.
Ah, okay, fair enough. Right, he was a star in Japan for that year.
That's right.
Yeah.
So how many 50-year-old men are going to be baseball stars?
Yeah.
And by the same token, how many 26-year-old men are going to be surgeons or CEOs? Any other kind of job that requires long years of study or long years of experience. And so even if they were the same, if the two groups were the same in every other way, and if there was absolutely no distinction, no discrimination and whatnot, there would be a huge difference in income simply because of age.
And that really is what this book is about. And the book itself, it's about 160 pages. But what I loved, you know how many pages of notes you have in there? Do you know offhand by any?
Well, I know 127 pages are text, and the rest of it is notes.
Yeah, so you had about 30 some odd pages on notes, and I actually started going through the notes because I thought this is exactly what we need now.
like when I was reading it, there were pages that I had to read more than once because you're obviously giving a lot of numbers and facts, and you have to look at these things from different angles, and we're not very good at that these days, right? We're sort of we look at things from one angle, and then you start the screaming, and I think that's what you're really a master of here.
Well, thank you. I try to, but we'll see how it works out.
We'll see. Do you make any meaningful distinction between sort of a classical liberal and a libertarian? Is that just sort of
that's wholly peripheral. That's what that was. I mean, just trying to get a few simple facts across is a full-time job.
Yeah. All right. So then let's talk about some of the facts that you lay out in the book. You talk about two types of discrimination.
Mm-hmm.
Could you lay those out?
Yeah. The word has almost opposite meanings. I mean, the first meaning, when they say someone has discriminating taste, you mean he can tell what is a good wine from a bad wine, what is a good camera from a bad camera, and so forth. And that's almost the exact opposite of the meaning in the law, where you mean someone who judges someone by what group he comes from, irrespective of the individual's actual personal qualities.
Right, can you stop there, please, Easy?
Yeah, I'll do it now.
Ideally, you would like every person to be judged as an individual.
Right, now what he's talking about with the word discrimination is really, really important, and a lot of people need to look at this, because when it comes down to the word discrimination, we have to discriminate every moment of our lives when we make decisions.
Exactly. You can't avoid it.
Yeah, you can't avoid discriminating because you have to know what's good, what's bad, and for example, do you allow your daughter to go to a disco age 13? Do you allow your daughter to come home later than 9 o'clock in the evening when it's going to be pitch black? Certain things like that. You have to discriminate. You have to say, well, what's going to lead to a good or positive outcome compared to a negative outcome. Now, what they do by saying that you can't discriminate is take away that element of judgment that we need, that everybody needs in their waking moment. If they tell you discrimination is wrong, then how do you discriminate good from bad? And this is what he's talking about, because he's saying that actually discrimination isn't always a bad thing, and that there's two ways of applying it. So this is how he's discussing it now. Yeah, so let's carry on.
I'm sick and tired. You have to say we don't have to. We're not tarring everybody. It's the same brush. I get fed up of having to do that.
Mm-hmm.
As a practical matter, that becomes impossible because the costs are prohibitive.
Yeah.
So I use the example where if you're walking down the street at night and you see a shadowy figure in an alley up ahead, I mean, do you judge him as an individual, or do you cross the street and go across on the other side? Because the cost of judging him as an individual can be very high, including your life. So we make that distinction.
Yeah, so let me stop again. I want to make a bit more.
It's when you
right.
just have a
very
good understanding.
Yeah, so we just gave a very similar thing to what I was saying, and what happens is that when you take away this discrimination factor, right, to the absolute, like these leftists are trying to do, what happens is you end up putting people in dangerous situations. And I'm going to give you a really good example of that. Do you remember those two girls, those European girls that went to Morocco and ended up being beheaded?
Yes.
On one of those girls' Facebook pages.
Yeah.
One of the last things she'd shared was an anti-discrimination video. And basically what the video was of a white woman walking down the road, and she sees a police car screech up and out jump the undercover police. And she sees them, so they're in plain clothes, so she doesn't know who they are straight away. And she sees a man with a beard who looks like a Muslim, walking, carrying a holdall. Yeah?
Yeah.
She sees them running towards him. Yeah?
Yeah.
And then they run past. They run past and they run to another criminal, right? Now she's held her breath, thinking that the man with the the beard is the criminal until she realizes that they run past. And then she says, you should love everybody equally. Do not be quick to judge. Right? That was one of the videos, the last videos that she shared. Okay. And she fell into this water sort of kind of worldview that the left tried to push, that, you know, you can go anywhere in the world, that you're safe, that people are not nasty. And you know, actually, if you went to have a look at how many people have traveled through the third world and actually ended up raped or murdered, you'll find that the numbers are quite staggering when they go into very outback places. And it's that kind of discrimination that they try to tell you you're being discriminatory, but actually you're not. You should be able to say, oh, I can't go there because this area is known for A, B, C, and D. You should be able to say that without people saying, oh, well, that's racist.
Yeah, because I lost a friend in Thailand. He went missing and he never was found. And he went, I don't know where he must have gone into a bush or something, one of these tribe bushes. It was on the national news, and that's what the left push, don't they? They push everything's fine and dandy everywhere across the world. It's also safe to go, and things like this happen all the time. And that's what he's trying to put across, isn't he? He's putting across his, you know, we've got to be honest about things, and
yeah,
he's
so let's
straight to the point.
Let's get to the discussion and let's hear what else they say.
What the facts are. And so if you judge these persons as an individual, I call that discrimination 1A. And then if you judge them by the group they belong to, that's not as good, but that's discrimination 1B, but it's still based on some facts. Discrimination 2, which is what reason we have anti-discrimination laws, is that you don't worry about that at all. If he's someone that you don't like for whatever reason, then you biased against him.
Yeah. Are you shocked when you look at what's going on right now and see so much talk about race all the time? So much talk about all of the things that separate us, the very things that you've been arguing against based in fact for so many years that seem in an odd way more. I don't think there's more racism now than ever or more of these dividers, but there's more talk about it.
Yes. And it's devastating. I mean, wars in general are much easier to start than they are to stop. I mean, when that fellow in Serbia shot the Archduke, I mean, who knew that was going to cost millions of people around the world, including people from the United States about 10,000 miles away, are going to come over there and start shooting?
Yeah, the Great War.
Yeah, and you can't get and I'm worried about the current trade war. You start a trade war, you may never be able to stop it in the next decade, because there are too many people involved, too many cross currents of interest.
This 39-pound monocular telescope allows you to see everything from miles away, like you're standing next to it. It's better than Tom.
Why are they saying new binocular ads?
Right at the end, they've done that as well.
I know, I'm teasing you. Right, so that's that. Before we go on to the second part, which does go into discrimination, let me drop this one to prove to you that the equality laws, and this is an interesting little clip, this next one. This next one, the equality laws are meant to be to protect white people as much as black people. And it's interesting that this Tory MP has stood up and spoke about this. Also, there were laws to stop class discrimination that actually was never enacted. And he's questioning why. So this is really interesting. Here's the video here. Let's have a look at that, and then we'll go to part 2 of Thomas Sowell. So.
Yes. Brilliant. Here we go. Get this up.
Mrs. Cummins, I beg to move that this House considers whether the Equalities Act 2010 protects children from disadvantaged schools rejecting charitable support for disadvantaged children based on their race. We've heard in recent weeks that this narrative has led to racial segregation in UK businesses like Sainsbury's. It's unhealthy. It's a backward step, in my view, Mrs. Cummins, and something needs to change.
Hey, what's going on? Is this
Welcome
it?
to Uncommon Knowledge. I'm Peter Robinson. We're shooting today in Fiesole.
Mrs. Cummins, I beg to move that this House
That's
considers
it there.
2010 protects children from disadvantaged backgrounds. I raise this today, Mrs. Cummins, because in truth, I'm not convinced that it does. And in fact, my view is that the misapplication and misinterpretation of the Equalities Act has led to the exclusion of some of our country's poorest people. Whether by flawed design or subsequent false interpretation, the Act doesn't deliver what was intended. That isn't something we should shy away from just because it's difficult or because it cuts against the popular narrative on diversity, because it's actually really important. If you were to listen to that narrative, the one that holds sway in the media and on Twitter, you'd be forgiven for believing that protected characteristics in the Act are things like BAME, female, or LGBT. That's how it usually is put across, even by our institutions, by businesses, even by government ministers and departments on the odd occasion. And in truth, that's not correct. The characteristics listed, in fact, are race, sex, sexuality, among others. In fact, a white heterosexual male has just as much protection under this law as a black gay female. It's equal, hence the name. Sometimes it seems like nobody knows this. It's actually quite mad. Rather than existing to prevent discrimination, an awful lot of people in influential positions, even in our national institutions, seem to be under the impression that the Equalities Act and its provision around positive action gives them the right to actively discriminate in favour of certain groups. Discrimination on the basis of those characteristics is, of course, illegal, whether it has positive as a prefix or not, and yet seems commonplace. For example, there are countless scholarships and bursaries for higher levels of study offered only to BAME students. That's not positive action, I'm afraid, that's discrimination. There's a difference. Encouraging underrepresented BAME students to apply for scholarships, yes. Excluding all white students from a scholarship on the basis of their race should be a no. That's the very definition of discrimination. Even worse when, through the lens of identity politics, it's actually the disadvantaged white children that struggle most to access HE, not BME children. It's positive discrimination in favour of a group that already statistically do better and at the expense of the most underrepresented. And yet, as I've said, this is commonplace.
Should this tactical zoom lens be made
For
illegal?
fuck's sake. Oh, sorry, language.
The Act, or at least the
I
interpretation...
can't go on my
implementation
premium
of it
one because I've blocked my Google account.
According to research by the writer and commentator Douglas Murray, it has in the main tended to support and promote those who are already closest to their destination, rather than digging down into supporting those in genuine need, perhaps due to the lack of provision around socio-economic circumstances. There is a socio-economic duty within the Act, Mrs. Cummins, Section 1, in fact, that will put a duty onto public bodies to exercise their duties in a way that is designed to reduce socio-economic inequalities. But this section has never been enacted. Now, I'm not a legal expert. I'm sure there's a reason for that. Perhaps some unintended consequences that would occur if it was enacted, perhaps a perception that it's unnecessary, public bodies should already be doing this. I know this isn't directly in the Minister's brief, but I wonder if, following the debate, she might ask the Equalities Minister to write to me on this issue. It seems clear that socioeconomic status or social class are, in fact, the greatest indicator of life chances, and yet this isn't a protected characteristic, nor is it enacted in Section 1. I'm sure that there is a reason. I will be back.
I'm very grateful to him, and he's making an excellent speech and a very good case, not just on the specific points he's mentioned, but in the wider principle of making sure that the Equalities Act actually works. I just wondered, could I add to his sort of list there the issue of geographical disadvantage, that often where you were born in this country, not just the family you're born into, everything, but the geographical disadvantage is often a key factor that very often gets overlooked and doesn't really get addressed.
That intervention, and he's absolutely right. You know, your access to services, for example, could be very much limited or decided by where you are lucky enough to be born. The key point, I suppose, that I'm making throughout this speech is that that discrimination, those differences in terms of equality of opportunity exist outside of just these protected characteristics that are enshrined in the Act, and that there are other reasons why people might not have that same opportunity that we should be addressing. So the lack of provision around socio-economic equality within the Act and the perverse consequences of the misinterpretation of protected characteristics and positive action means that it can often seem like every other group in society has a support and protection under the Act, is protected by the Act, apart from the most disadvantaged children, and white boys and men in particular. Recently, UCAS statistics showed that only 9% of white boys on free school meals go to university. The second lowest was white girls on free school meals at 14%. White boys from disadvantaged backgrounds are most likely to drop out of school with no qualifications and have the lowest rate of achieving GCSEs, followed by, yes, disadvantaged white girls. In contrast, black or Asian girls have the highest chances of going to university. And if these statistics were reversed,
He's right there, though.
an uproar. In BME groups, boys also tend to do worse than girls. Rates of grammar school entry, for example, is another place where the results differ based on that ethnic background. Disadvantaged white British children enter grammar school at the lowest rate of any major ethnic group. Disadvantaged Indian pupils are 4 times more likely to attend. Chinese pupils, 15 times more likely. And again, across all races and ethnicities, boys are lower in the rankings than girls. So in education, at least, the constant false interpretation of the Act, which promotes positive action for BAME and female, seems entirely backwards. It's disadvantaged white boys that are statistically faring the worst, that are underrepresented at universities, underrepresented in our public institutions, and whose life chances are most limited through being most likely to have no qualifications. The popular narrative of white privilege is regularly wheeled out, assuming that these poorest white children don't face discrimination on that basis, Mrs. Cummings, but in fact, they do. If you step outside of the Twitter bubble, then you'll be faced with the stark reality that through this kind of rhetoric, our society is ignoring what is statistically one of its most vulnerable demographics. As it happens, these lads are also more likely than anyone to chuck themselves in front of a train, and that's not a coincidence. It could be argued, if one was so inclined, that the Act, or at least the unfettered misapplication of the Act, has played a part in exacerbating this problem. I've long argued that identity politics is divisive and unhelpful, and this Act enshrines it in our laws. It doesn't recognise the individual need of the most disadvantaged people and actively supports the advancement of others through so-called positive action based not on their actual individual needs or disadvantage, not on any actual discrimination or barriers they face as individuals, but on the basis of broad assumptions based on their physical characteristics. The identity politics, the lumping of people into boxes rather than considering their individual circumstances that is enshrined in the Act is deeply troubling. We've seen it manifest itself in other ways that have caught this popular public narrative recently, and yet surely it's the case that privilege or hardship are not in fact based on which of these characteristic boxes you have, but in fact down to your wider individual circumstances. Things like your socioeconomic background or the geography, as my honourable friend mentioned. And socioeconomic status, social class is in fact more indicative of your life chances than these physical characteristics. They play a part, of course they do. Discrimination exists, racism exists, misogyny, homophobia, of course they do. They're one part of a more complex picture, one segment of an individual's life experience and of their opportunity. We should help people based on their actual needs, not on the basis of guesswork based on flawed metrics. The interpretation and implementation of the Act is deeply flawed. I'm fed up to the back teeth of identity politics, Mrs. Cummings, to be honest. I don't want to be stood here saying white kids this and white kids that. I value all kids and all of their futures, and the support that they get should be based on what they need, not on the colour of their skin or their gender or any other grand narrative that we concoct, it seems, to make ourselves feel better. Separating black and white, gay and straight, male and female all the time, and in this way is combative, it's unhelpful. But it feels sometimes like I have to highlight white kids and white disadvantaged kids and their plight, because otherwise they don't seem to get a look.
If you think the financial establishment's got your best interests at heart and your money's being well looked after, then please don't.
No, that's mad. You need to get rid of it.
Disadvantage, then the system, our legislation, this misinterpretation of the Equalities Act always seem to bring that discussion back around to BAM.
You're right, Rich. He does.
Interpretations that we've enshrined in law. If you don't say white kids, then the popular narrative and the system seem to, and have in many cases, left them behind in favour of a fundamentally flawed diversity agenda, which is hugely frustrating, and in many ways it's wrong. So in closing, I asked the Minister some questions and I don't know the answers, and I don't expect her to know the answers, but I hope that they will be taken away for her consideration. I know as an Education Minister she'll no doubt have some remarks on the points I've made around educational aspects, which I would welcome, and I know the Secretary of State's been very clear on his wish to support more disadvantaged white working class boys into university, for example, if that's their aspiration, and that's very welcome. I have some questions regarding the Equalities Act itself, and I wonder if you could take them away and perhaps raise them with colleagues in the Equalities Office. Firstly, why is the socio-economic provision within the Act not enacted? And if it is flawed or inappropriate in its detail, how can we fix it? What protections can the Act offer to those who face barriers and discrimination based on being poor, being in care, or other hardships that aren't recognised in this law? Secondly, if the answer currently is none, then will the government look closely at the implications of this section of the Act and seek to amend it in a way that would offer such support? Thirdly, could government review the implications of amending the Act to remove or change any damaging positive action elements which go way beyond preventing discrimination and actually, due to the constant misinterpretation by those who claim ownership of it, appear in practice to condone positive discrimination to the exclusion of some of our country's poorest people? And finally, at the very least, could government consider clearly restating the actual aims and nature of the provisions of this Act, laying out the reality and challenging the false rhetoric that exists around it, and requiring its own officers and institutions to implement it in a fair and balanced way? There are fundamental flaws, in my view, in the way that this Act is implemented, whether by poor design or poor interpretation, but left unchallenged, this has made things worse for some of the most vulnerable children in our society. The narrative has led to things like fee-paying schools rejecting charitable support for disadvantaged children based on their race. We've heard in recent weeks that this narrative has led to racial segregation in UK businesses like Sainsbury's. It's unhealthy. It's a backward step, in my view, Mrs. Cummings, and something needs to change.
Wow.
So we don't have positive discrimination in this country, but we do in reality because they're misusing these laws, the equality laws. White people are supposed to be protected under these laws equally to black people, and it's not being put out in that way. So that was good. So now we'll go back to part 2 of Thomas Sowell.
I wonder how many of them people walked out and actually kept that in their head, what he said, or just forgot about it and just left.
Well, no, but I'm going to keep playing it. It's something that needs to be talked about, and therefore, you know.
Have you put it in Jupiter? Is that one there, or is that the old one?
No, that's the old one. I'm just about to drop it now. So here's the part 2 of Thomas Sowell. There you go.
Come on, what's it not showing up? Oh, there it is.
Gorgeous letter.
What would you do about our school systems?
Oh my goodness! I'll try to be rational.
Do try.
They are so awful. The public has no idea what. I'm reading a book about the schools, and the woman who's writing it, Diane Ravitch, is talking about
bloody ads.
How teachers have due process before they can be fired. Now, when you look into the facts of it, right down here, and I think it was Atherton, it cost $500,000 to fire one incompetent teacher. You know, you don't have a big enough budget, you know. And right. in New York, you have something called the rubber room. These are teachers who are so incompetent that the principals don't want them in the classroom. You know, and they get paid full salary, and they show up, and they accrue pension rights and so forth. And the last time, I forget how many millions of dollars I spent a year in New York paying for teachers who don't teach, and in fact don't do anything but show up at the same time as if they were teaching, and they read magazines or whatever they feel like doing. And this farce goes on at a time when they don't have enough money to provide the kids with decent supplies.
So how do we scale back this? I mean, we can talk about it through the lens of education, but in any area where the government has taken on a bigger role than it's supposed to, I think one of the things you hear all the time is it's sort of too late. I think a lot of people think it's too late to take back that government power.
No, heavens, during the Reagan administration, that was the only time I know of when the Federal Register grew smaller, where they compile all the laws that have been passed in a given time. So it can be done. It's not easy, but it can be done. There was some issue that Reagan was discussing, and someone said, it's complicated. He said, it's not complicated. It's just not easy to do. I mean, right now, one of the big farces out here talks about affordable housing. And they're appointing blue ribbon committees to look into why there's no affordable housing. And I think that's like appointing a blue ribbon committee to explain why the ground is wet after a rain. I mean, it's very simple. If you prevent people from building housing and the population is growing, you're going to have a housing shortage, and you won't have affordable housing. It's really, economics 1 during the first 2 weeks.
They're not very good at taking economics 101, I don't think. So would your answer be in almost every case to just scale back government, scale back regulation?
It depends on what they're doing. There are some things that government is necessary to do.
So what are those type of things that you
for security, first of all, having dependable laws. Some people think that if you're for free markets, that means you don't think the government should do anything. No. The free markets don't operate except within a framework of laws. That's wholly different from having them operate with politicians jumping in at unpredictable times to suddenly pass some new legislation.
Yeah. What can we do right now? I mean, so really this would be about just sort of electing more libertarian-minded politicians then? I mean, is that really the only way we can change things, do you think?
No, I think the main thing, people have to know what the facts are themselves. If everyone knew what all the facts were, I think you'd have an entirely different set of people elected. I can't believe that either of the presidential candidates in 2016 would have been the candidates if you had an informed public.
Yeah, we're not very good at that. How much of this do you think is part of the media's fault? That's one of the things.
Well, the media are mostly uninformed. No, they're not uninformed. They are misinformed.
Mm-hmm.
And they simply do not check the facts on large issues or small.
Yeah. What can we do to fix that, do you think? I mean, I suppose this,
right?
But writing books like this.
Well, but I think more fundamentally, the public that votes has to itself become informed and not be so easily stampeded by slogans and a few numbers thrown around, like, women make X% of what men make and so on.
Yeah.
And when I was studying that some years ago, for example, I found out that young female doctors made much less money than young male doctors. That seemed like very odd. And but when you look into it, you discover that young male doctors work an average of 500 hours a year more than young female doctors, and they get paid for the 500 hours. Mm-hmm. But there's no reason why the women and men should be doing the same thing. Their circumstances are different.
These days, many people are wondering, could this be the right time to invest? As eToro traders have shown.
So are there any laws that are in place right now that you believe are discriminatory one way or another towards any community or against any community?
I would have to write a much larger book to cover them all. The minimum wage law is absolutely devastating. The policy of saying that you cannot have more kids from one ethnic group disciplined in the school than from another is nonsense. I mean, groups are different from each other in umpteen ways, and to have the presumption that they are the same except for the way they're treated is nonsense. It's never been true, and I don't know why we would think it's true here today.
So I do sense that some of what you just said there is bubbling up into the national conscious, because I get a ton of email from Black conservatives now, people that feel that they haven't been represented fairly, or that the so-called leaders of the Black community that are on television all the time are actually preaching the complete reverse of everything that you've said here.
Yes.
Do you sense that there is some sort of growing conservative movement
in the
Black community?
There was a time when that community consisted of me and Walter Williams. I know Walter used to say the two of us should never fly on the same plane, otherwise the whole movement will disappear if the plane goes down.
I mentioned to you before we started that Larry Elder caused my awakening because I was a progressive and I said something to him about systemic racism on air, and he beat me senseless with facts. And I had to go back and reassess what was wrong with my thinking.
Well, in one of the chapters there, I have a little section about the era of apartheid in South Africa, and I had that in there because there's so much argument about how much racism is there and so forth. I said, let's test this hypothesis in a setting where there's absolutely no doubt of it, and that's apartheid in South Africa. where the government, where blacks are not allowed to vote and so forth, and you then apply the economic principles, you find that the economic principles apply in South Africa, that there are some occupations. See, blacks weren't allowed by law to be in certain occupations more than a certain percentage, and in some occupations couldn't be hired at all. In some of those occupations where they couldn't be hired at all, well, it's illegal to hire them at all, there were more blacks hired than there were whites, because there are economic factors that come in, and you don't just pass a law and that automatically produces the results you want.
Yeah. Can you go into some of the economic factors that you mentioned there? Because I thought it was sort of interesting about the types of jobs that black people had and why that would affect.
Well, it's the competitiveness of the industry. And the competitive industry, discrimination in the sense that we use for anti-discrimination laws, it costs the discriminator as well as the others. Now, insofar as the price can be evaded by the discriminator, he will discriminate. For example, minimum wage laws. When you have a minimum wage law, you have more people applying for jobs in those categories than there are jobs available, because raising the wage rate causes more people to apply and employers to hire fewer because they're more expensive. And so you have a chronic surplus. Now, if you've got a chronic surplus in an industry, it costs nothing to discriminate. But if you have a competitive market, then of course it does cost something. For every person that you discriminate against who's qualified, you've got to hire somebody else, and you've got to raise that pay rate in order to get people in. So I show how competitive industries have much less discrimination than, say, regulated public utilities.
So I was wondering when I was reading it if you were ever going to talk about how now technology is also changing this. So we see a lot of these movements for $15 minimum wage, and I know why you don't think that's a great idea. But even now, where we see McDonald's and some of these other places just replacing people with iPads and computers.
This has been happening. I don't know. When I grew up in Harlem, when you went into a movie theater, this is a little neighborhood movie theater in Harlem, there would be a kid who would walk right down the aisle with you with a flashlight, show you to your seat, you see. And so now that we have so many compassionate people who want people to be paid a living wage, you stumble down the aisle to your seat the best way you can, because they're not going to pay you the kind of money, that's unrelated to productivity.
Yeah. What would you say to the people? I hear a growing movement of people saying, well, this is why we need a universal basic income, because technology is going to force so many people out of the workplace.
Oh, that argument has been made for centuries. It's been proven wrong for centuries. I would ask the question, what has happened? We've moved in that direction already. We have lots of people who can live off the welfare state and not have to be productive. And how are they better people as a result of that? I saw some time back, and I haven't followed this, that young people, the suicide rates among young people were among the negative consequences of the 1960s. You've taken all meaning out of people's lives. And so they find all kinds of crazy things to do, drugs, whatever. And then, again, it's not peculiar to the United States. You find this in Britain, other countries. And so, again, people who say this almost never look at any facts about what's happened as we expanded the welfare state. Did people behave better? No. I mean, one of the things moments that I remember very well, when I was back in the school in Harlem for some reason, maybe doing research, and I looked out the window and I said, when I was a teenager, I used to walk my dog in that park, and looks of horror came over the students' faces, because that was a different world. And so, and when I tell them that I used to sleep out on a fire escape on hot summer nights, who could afford air conditioning, and they think I'm a man from Mars. People did that all over New York. They did it in Washington. They did it in North Carolina. Relatives in Washington used to go down and Haynes Point down near the Jefferson Memorial on hot summer nights and sleep there till sometime after midnight when the heat wouldn't be so bad, and they'd go home at that time. You'd be out of your mind to do that today. It'd be too dangerous.
Yeah. So how do we sort of untie some of this? So my sister right now lives on the Upper West Side of Manhattan, not too far from Harlem, and she's in a half rent stabilized or rent controlled building, and half market price. She's on the market price, so she's paying to be in a 2-bedroom in New York City. I don't even want to tell you how expensive it is. But then there are basically half of the building that's paying next to nothing, and that of course incentivizes people not to get off the dole, because if you're living in a nice area on the Upper West Side, very cheap, why in the world would you ever get off the dole? How do we start solving these problems? And I know facts is your bedrock answer.
Yes.
But what can we do to get people to understand some of this stuff? Because it seems so basic to understand. If someone was giving you something that you didn't earn,
again,
it's hard to.
This is common. One of this in Europe, in England especially. It's a special problem because you have this place where your rent is subsidized, and say you're in London, and jobs are disappearing in London, and they're opening up in Manchester. Now, if you go to Manchester, you get on a waiting list for that kind of job, and if you stay in London, you're unemployed, but your rent is low, and so you slow down the movement of people, you slow down the turnover of people in these apartments. But again, most people who talk about this don't even talk in terms of if this, then that. They talk about it as this is how the world ought to be. Well, heck, I can think of all kinds of things of how I think the world ought to be. But unfortunately, most of those things involve a cost, a trade-off.
Do you think there's a system or a government that's doing it better, doing freedom better than we're doing it here? For all the flaws that we have in this system, is anyone doing it better than us?
Oh, there may be marginally so, but I think most of the Western world is less free than it was, say, 30 years ago, 40 years ago.
By what measurements do you view that?
Oh, just the amount of regulations, things and also by consequences. I was reading Milton Friedman's. He and his wife had a joint autobiography, and she's looking at one point. She says looking back on the days when she would ride the IND subway in Manhattan, and what a joy it was, as she said, in those long gone days. And the IND subway goes through Harlem. And Milton Friedman and his wife, when they were still courting, used to go dancing at the Savoy Ballroom. Very few people want to, and the famous theme song of Duke Ellington, "Take the A Train." Mm-hmm. The A Train goes right through Harlem on the IND line. And so Friedman, who was only 5'2", had no fear of being mugged or even accosted, and go there. And this was common. There was a black actress who used to get finished with play and her socializing afterwards. And at 1 o'clock in the morning, she said she would be taking the subway up to 155th Street and St. Nicholas Avenue by herself and walking home. Nobody does that these days. And so you have to look, one, at what are the facts? How did they change? And you don't simply say. The other thing is that they're saying the No Child Left Behind thing with Bush. Mm-hmm. There are kids who go to school to raise hell, and a handful of those can prevent the whole class from learning anything. Now, the logical thing would be to separate those kids out and let the ones who want to learn something. You can't do that because the ideology says no. And so you sacrifice whole generations of poor and minority kids for this ideology and this utopian notion.
Yeah, and we end up in an odd dystopia, probably.
Yeah, and Milton Friedman used to say, the best is the enemy of the good. Yeah. And of course, it would be better if everybody could be educated at the same time. It can't be done.
So as someone that has survived the arrows and the venom that the left can throw at you, because I see a lot of this these days. I see even what they say to me. I get a lot of email from people saying, how can I be brave enough to do it? And I think it's particularly a unique situation for minorities that consider themselves conservative or libertarian, a little bit to the right. So I mentioned Larry Elder before, and of course you and my friend David Webb. And there are some more black conservatives than perhaps there used to be.
No question about it.
What would be if someone's watching this right now and just needs that little extra bit of courage to start saying?
No. You have to look at the circumstances. I mean, I've advised some young people, do not go into teaching in public schools, because the odds are so stacked against you, and people can write bad references for you, especially when you're young, and what they say about you is all that someone sees. Now, by the time I was teaching at some of these schools, I remember one place where the department chairman used to threaten one of my colleagues he wouldn't write good references for him. I published stuff while I was still in graduate school. I had Milton Friedman and Joyce Stigler to write references for me. What this guy said there as chairman of the department wouldn't matter a bit. But most people don't have that situation.
No.
And so you have to pick your fights.
So I want to, time is limited here. I want to mention one thing that you say right at the end of the book, that really what we need more than anything else, perhaps, is common decency.
Yes.
And we've kind of lost that.
It isn't common anymore. I mean, when I was going to school, and we'd have fights on the schoolyard grounds, when one guy was clearly beaten, whoever was the toughest kids in the crowd would simply step in and stop it. And the other guys said, "You want to fight? You can fight me." You know.
That's what we need in the public square now.
Yes. But with I mean, the police. There's only so much the police can do. If you don't have common decency, the cops are not going to be able to handle it. And especially when everyone is second guessing it. I love it when people who have never fired a gun in their lives say, "Why do the cops fire so many guns?" Now, at one time, I taught pistol shooting in the Marine Corps. It doesn't surprise me in the slightest that they fired so many things under those conditions. But people can't be knowledgeable about everything, but they can be knowledgeable about the extent of their own ignorance, even if they have PhDs.
Sir, this has been a true honor and a pleasure, and I know I can see it in your eyes, even the sort of humility that you have and humbleness. But you've affected so many people and are still continuing to affect so many people, and I hope that we might have just given that a little extra bump today. So I'm truly honored that you took the time.
Well,
today.
thank you very much.
Very interesting. Right, dupes, I've got to pop out, mate.
Okay, sorry, Easy. I was just doing something else.
That's all right.
All right.
That's all right. Thanks for coming on, dupes. I'll be on later. All right.
Yeah.
What a bit.
Take care. Bye-bye.
All right. See you later. Bye-bye.